It's time for MacBreak Weekly, our 800th episode. Andy brought cake. Renee and Alex are here, too, to celebrate. And while there's not a whole lot of Apple news, we will talk about teenagers who are getting bullied because of the green bubble. And why can't Apple make messaging a universal platform? South Korea finally will allow third-party payment systems on iOS. Is this a good idea? And the LA police officers who decided to play Pokémon instead of tracking down a robber. It's all coming up next on our 800th episode. Let them eat cake.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 800, recorded Tuesday, January 11th, 2022. Medically contraindicated. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by New Relic. That next 9 p.m. call is just waiting to happen. Get New Relic before it does, and you can get access to the whole New Relic platform and 100 gigabytes of data free forever. No credit card required. Sign up at newrelic.com/MacBreak. And by BetterHelp. Join over 1 million people who've taken charge of their mental health. As a listener, you'll get 10% off your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/MacBreak. And by Our Crowd. Our Crowd helps accredited investors invest early in pre-IPO companies alongside professional venture capitalists. Join the fastest growing venture capital investment community at ourcrowd.com/MacBreak. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from Apple, which this time of year is usually the snooze from Apple. Renee Ritchie is here, youtube.com/Renee Ritchie. How do you do it as a YouTube star to keep that content flowing during these slow periods?
Oh, I mean, somebody is always mad and somebody is always wrong, Leo. I mean, that's the beautiful thing. It's like the business publications, they have to keep their readers, so they find anything they can, and then they make it a. There's teenagers who are being bullied by iMessage. Yeah. There's pleas from Android executives. It is just chock full of drama today.
I actually do want to talk about that Wall Street Journal story because I like almost, if I'd had a newspaper, I would have thrown it down. But we'll get to that in a second. First, I have to say hello to Andy Iannacco. Don't have to, want to say hello to Andy Iannacco of WGBH Boston and Places East. Hello,
Hello,
Andrew.
Leo, and congratulations. We are celebrating episode 800 of the MacBreak podcast. I did get us a cake.
Oh, with blue icing. Did it say 800 on it?
Yeah, it's on my Instagram. I actually posted it to our Discord if you want to take a look at it.
Oh, my God. You've done more than we have. Wasn't paying attention.
Well, also, I thought it was a special occasion, and also we've been under COVID protocols for 2 years, so I haven't been to weddings or birthdays, and it's been a long time since I've had cake.
There's been a cake deficit in your life. Is that what you're saying?
Decision.
Oh, look at that. You really did. You did go all out. And how is the cake?
It is a beautiful golden yellow cake with thick buttercream. I'm saving the roses for when I've given up all hope of life and don't matter getting like a sugar coma.
It's beautiful, beautiful. Wow. Is that your favorite cake bakery?
It's a local market that has a really good bakery department, and unfortunately, I did pay full dollar for this cake, but they do this really cruel thing where occasionally, people will not pick up cakes, and they will simply cut this enormous sheet cake in quarters and say, "Okay, here's 1/4 of a huge sheet cake for $1.99," and I'm like, that is a really good deal on sheet cake, and I do enjoy cake.
And 1/4 of a cake, it's not that much.
Exactly, it's not the entire cake.
Depends on how big the cake is.
Exactly. Well,
it's a big sheet. Are you saying it's a queen size or is it a California king? I mean, how big is the sheet?
I would iPad Pro 12.9 inch.
Oh, perfect.
Size.
A quarter of that's just right.
No, I'm saying that's a quarter of that is 12. Whoever it is that quit and they had a going away party must have circulated a memo on how they really feel about the entire staff, and so they canceled the party. I will say it's just too much cake for someone who lives alone and maybe is not necessarily of gossamer proportions to begin with. It's medically contraindicated. However, every once in a while, if I could just have one lovely cake, I'll freeze the rest of it. I promise. Whatever I don't eat during this show or dinner tonight, I will freeze.
This is a, by the way, new world record. Andy actually has now 2 titles in one sentence. Medically Contraindicated, which would be, I think, an excellent title for this show. And then there was another one, which, of course, I only have a short-term memory of a gnat, so I can't remember. But you said it, and we'll go back and listen again and find it.
I try to continue to add value, even after so many years for the show.
After so many pieces of sheet cake. Also with us from Office Hours and 090.media, Alex Lindsay. I referred somebody on the radio show to you this week because he wanted to set up a streaming thing, and he was wondering what kind of cameras, et cetera, et cetera. He's actually, it was an interesting call. A guy named Charlton, as in Heston, he said. He's in Hollywood. He's an art director. He does, don't tell anybody, he was doing the sets for Westworld. So, you know, he's been working on it since the inaugural episode. So he really, you know, I said, well, I want to give you props because the people who do these beautiful sets don't get really acknowledged. And yet when I watch a movie, I don't know, I guess it's because of you, Alex. I'm always thinking about behind the scenes production. And I'm thinking, God, they put so much effort into making that look real and perfect. It looks so good. It's so good. And the next day, it's gone. He said, yeah, that's it. You shoot for 2 days, 10 seconds of film, and it's up, and we throw it out. So anyway, props to him. But he wanted to do a streaming thing, and I said, well go to Office Hours. So look for Charlton on Office Hours.
We will. We'll keep our eye out for him.
Yeah. I said, you go in there, join the Zoom, just ask the question, and then sit back as an avalanche of knowledge.
It really is amazing. Every once in a while I wake up and we're getting ready. Like there's this roll up, you know, to 7 o'clock in the morning every day, Pacific Standard Time. And there's like at 6:30 is the mic checks, and the mics, like today we had, you know, all these people are doing mic checks and they're checking their camera angles and all their bits and pieces. And then we had a guest. We have this company called Harrison. They make mixers, and they have this online audio mixing system called Mixbus. And so they come in and they do their thing, and then everyone's kind of setting up, and there's just this huge movement. And as I'm making my coffee, like listening to it kind of work out, I was like, this is crazy.
It is amazing what you have done. It's truly amazing what you've set up. Yeah.
It's such a great, and it's such a great bunch of people. And every time, and you know, between when I'm not in meetings, I just leave after hours, which is runs 21 hours a day. I just leave it on. It's like I just sit in the background and people are talking about, I mean, someone yesterday was talking about like how to weld pieces of stuff for their Jeeps and put cameras on them. And they're like a live streamer with like, you know, a lot of followers, you know, on YouTube. And, you know, they're just kind of, but they were just kind of hacking through ideas and so on and so forth. And so it's quite a thing. Yeah.
Unbelievable. A great resource. Highly recommended, officehours.global. So let's talk about that Wall Street Journal piece, because you think you nailed it, Renee, when you said at this time of year, publications have to come up with anything to keep you reading. I mean, there's plenty of financial news, but the Wall Street Journal decided it's time to talk about how Apple is bullying teenagers. And this came from a study that said 87% of all teenagers have iPhones.
I thought it was 70%, but it might be 80.
I have to give credit to Neil Seibart because he tweeted, Wall Street Journal editor, it's been a while since we had an Apple story. Any ideas? Wall Street Journal reporter, how about iMessage popularity amongst teens? Editor, boring. Any way to spice it up? Reporter, how about Apple leverages teen bullying and peer pressure to give itself an edge in messaging? Editor, bingo.
Bingo. Why Apple's iMessage is winning. Teens dread the green text bubble. The iPhone maker cultivated iMessage as a must-have texting tool for teens. Android users trigger a just a little less cool green bubble. Ew, that's gross. And that's just to the headline.
I mean, in the U.S., where people actually use iMessage, right? Because the rest of the world is going, "What's iMessage?"
Yeah, it's such a tiny platform. It's like iMessage is like this tiny. It doesn't. I did some research for this when I saw this article, and I was trying to find their market share, and it's like doesn't even show up on most of the charts. Like it's like this tiny little. You know, in the U.S., I think it might be 17%, depending on how they. But evidently, U.S. teens think it's important. Which, of course, we should bring involve our legislators, because we now need to. Worry about how teens are interacting with their phone.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. I mean,
but there is a point to be made, and this was, of course, Google and the Android team jumped on this article immediately and said, "This is Hiroshi Lockheimer saying this is why Apple." although their solution was not Apple should port iMessages to Android because they realize that's futile. We know Apple has no intent of doing that because of lock-in. I mean, let's admit it. Apple admits it in their emails.
As Craig Federighi himself explicitly said in emails discovered through the
Epic lawsuit. By the way, Alex, there are two different numbers. That's where you got the 70%. So according to Consumer Intelligence Research Partners, 40% of U.S. consumers use iPhones, but among those aged 18 to 24, more than 70% are iPhone users. But then go down 2 paragraphs, and Piper Sandler, which did a survey of teenagers, found that 87% of teens surveyed last year own iPhones. I think that's more accurate. I asked my son when he was in college, which was now 5 years ago. He was in a frat. I said, do any of the frat boys have Androids? He said, all but one of us have iPhones. All but
Android
one.
Curious? Not even in college?
And not even in college. And the reason he said is that poor guy with the Android phone never gets invited to our group texts.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
You
he's
never
left out of all the events. So everybody, so there is, it is not inaccurate to say there's peer pressure to have an iPhone.
It's not ridiculous. It does have an effect on conversations, even for grown-ups. It's most of my immediate family have iPhones, and the idea of I don't want to have to give them like a 2-sentence reaction to something when I just want to say, ooh, cool photo. But whereas they can just simply long press and say favorite or love or like, I still have to go through like the regular SMS channels. And so, yeah, I am kind of at a disadvantage. And yeah, it does cause a problem when they're using like what they consider to be advanced chat features. And I have to say that I wish that Apple would explain what the problem is with RCS and other standards, that they don't want to just roll that into the standard like phone messaging app. I understand the argument for not supporting iMessage on Android, even outside of the argument, even outside of the email evidence that, hey, we don't want to give families an easy excuse to buy cheap Android phones for their kids. But I understand that there are technical reasons, that there's who's going to pay for the backbone of this network, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think that Apple needs to respond broadly by saying we're going to at least make our standard messaging app for phone-to-phone conversation and support as many good emerging standards that are being supported in the United States as we can.
See, I'm way more selfish because my whole thing with this, well, 2 things. One is the green bubble, blue bubble originally served a real purpose because text messages you paid for and they were not encrypted. And Apple believed you needed a visual state to know that if your message was like falling over into SMS, you might be charged for it, or it may no longer be secure. And the way they did that was with the green and blue differentiation. And of course, society ran with that. But my thing is, it still does that. Like, it's 2021 and it'll still fall over to SMS if it can't make an iMessage connection. Or if somebody switches devices and they're suddenly on a non-iPhone, that group chat will fall out of iMessage. And I don't ever want to be like just in the position to have no control over whether my messages are secured or not. And RCS is not a great solution yet. It's still maturing. It's way better than it used to be. It does now support one-to-one encryption. It's working on one-to-many. And Apple doesn't announce the stuff before June anyway. So I think it's weird that Hiroshi's all angry about it in January when there's no chance Apple's going to announce anything for 6 months. Right. But I would love it just as a security conscious, privacy conscious iPhone user if I never had to see SMS again in my chat room.
So you make an interesting point, which is that this is mostly a US only problem, because in the rest of the world, WhatsApp or a Line or WeChat, whatever, depending on the region you're in, is so dominant and provides all those features that there isn't an issue, right?
Right.
So it's
only not on WhatsApp in Brazil. You're in a lot of trouble, like social trouble.
It's a US. It's primarily a U.S. thing, and the thing is, Apple's not going to do anything unless they're legally forced to do it, and they're not going to be forced to do something with iMessaging because they're like a tiny part of the market. And so the thing is that I just don't think that there's going to be any real movement here. I think any time a company has unless it's some larger thing that they're forced to do legally, but they're not going to do anything on their own because you don't have this is every company. You control what makes you different and you commoditize what doesn't. And Apple does the same thing with Swift and USDZ. They're trying to break into those markets. They don't control those markets. So they want to support those and make them as open as they possibly can.
Although
messages,
yes, Swift is open, but honestly, nobody uses it except on Mac. I mean, there was an attempt. In fact, IBM even had like a Swift playground and stuff, but all of those attempts have kind of failed. But
I'm not talking about whether they succeed or fail. I'm just talking about whether.
Yeah, initially that was the idea.
So, and it's still open.
But
Apple's still contributing to
Apple's
it.
tendency is to really
But yeah,
I think that they only compete when they have to, right? They want
anytime. Yep. Go ahead.
That's your point, though, is that they only do this because they have to.
Well, and the thing is that when you submit to a standard, or when you go more open, you are going to be slowed down by that standard. That is, standards are useful. I use lots of standards that are that are useful for me, but that's the cost. The cost is you can't innovate and do everything that you want to do. You can't make it. You can't keep on making it better just the way you want. You have to now interact with everybody else who's doing something and try to figure out. You spend a big chunk of your time trying to figure out how it's going to work inside of everybody else's. Apple doesn't want to do that and doesn't need to do that. And so until they're forced to, I think that sure that there's lock into it as well. But as a minority stakeholder in the phone market and a very minority stakeholder in the messaging market, both globally and domestically, it's going to be very hard to force them to change.
I don't know if that's fair to say domestically. I think Apple is not a minority in the U.S.
It's just under 50%. No, under 50%.
Every company, though, will will try to keep proprietary and closed what makes them money and open up and try to disseminate what makes their competitors money. It's like why WebKit is open and Swift is open and why AdSense is not. It's just a normal course of business. But this, to me, is like a fundamental issue. If Apple is going to be the security privacy first company and SMS is notoriously horribly outdated and flawed and vulnerable in a myriad of ways, they're going to have to keep updating that. Like in terms of just staying true to their own rhetoric. It's just they're not going to do it in January. If they're going to do it like at WWDC, they'll announce, and by the way, now we support, and they're not going to pre-announce it either. They very rarely.
If they support RCS, it's just going to be a green bubble still. Like it's just going to be green.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
RCS green bubble.
And as a number of people pointed out,
it doesn't have to be.
Including Ars Technica, once Ars got a hold of Hiroshi Lockheimer's statement, is RCS is kind of is actually not the answer to this. It's kind of
a disaster.
I mean, it's
built on old
Ron's
ideas.
Point is that the telephone numbers are outdated. Like his whole thing, like he's angry
Ron
about
Amadio, the author of
he's angry about it because telephone numbers are outdated and shouldn't be used as a basis for any communications account anymore. And that's true. I mean, but that's like SMS has that problem already. So you're fixing a bad problem. You're not fixing the root cause of it.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is,
Ron tweeted, RCS is this was yesterday, a terrible messaging standard because it's dependent on a carrier phone bill. It's anti-internet and should not be promoted or advocated for. My Verizon bill is not my identity. Point well taken. Apple lock-in is bad, and the solution is carrier lock-in? No.
Well, his argument is you can't go into a library and use an email address to log into your RCS account and get your messages that way.
Wouldn't it be the ideal if everybody in the United States would just get together and say, let's use WhatsApp, and then, well, maybe not because it's Facebook, but...
Yeah, see,
isn't it amazing on that point, Leo? Isn't it amazing?
Go ahead, Andy.
Well, isn't it amazing that Facebook owns all this messaging and Google owns none of it? Like Facebook owns WhatsApp.
Well, and that was Ron's point on Ars Technica is this is only because Google fumbled it.
It's because Google fumbled it, but also they have almost no market share in the US, and they're not almost, but they have a dwindling market share in the US. And that's why I think Hiroshi decided to weigh in on this, because there's very little way to turn that around if Apple has all of these lock-ins. So they don't care about this in Kenya or in Eastern Europe because it's not an issue. They care very bad. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I think it's important. I think part of the reason they do have that problem is because iMessage is like the way it is.
Andy, go ahead.
Well,
I was just going to say that I'm surprised that people are more concerned about carrier lock-in, where I can take my phone to any other. I'll talk about United States laws, where I can take this to any other carrier I want, take my phone number with me, and my text messages will follow me wherever I go. But they weren't be concerned about, well, yes, we got WhatsApp, yes, but that's a private corporation that follows your phone around wherever you go. Is that a better solution? And and yes, RCS isn't perfect. It's not even. I don't think it's fully baked yet, but you can add features to iMessage that will address a lot of the problems about being an iMessage user in a larger world and vice versa. You can have secure communications. You can have even just simple things like long press on something to hold down a, hey, I liked this, have a better interaction of group chats. I would also say that I'm not necessarily disagreeing with what Renee is saying, but this problem didn't just pop up with this Wall Street Journal article. They could have started addressing this 3 or 4 years ago.
We've talked about it. We've been talking about the sad blue bubbles for years.
Yeah, so I mean, we didn't. So Apple could have started saying that, hey, look, we have two components to our stock messaging app. One is one that tries to be the most compatible and secure and useful messaging app that works just basically carrier to carrier, app to app, system to system, OS to OS. The other is, hey, if we recognize that you're using it's an iPhone to iPhone, we will add extra enhancements, but we're not going to deliberately keep non-iPhone to iPhone communications in the Clinton administration just because we're afraid that if we give people a better messaging app, they'll stop giving us their money. And I think that's something that Apple has to respond to it these days.
I just don't know if it's that critical of an issue because, like, for me, there's like 2 people or 3 people that I interact with, Andy being one of them, over a green bubble, and mostly because if they have a green bubble, I immediately just move to another messaging platform. I just go, okay, well, let's talk on Signal, or let's talk. Right. Signal's my primary one that if I'm not using the iMessage, and so, and I get a random couple messages. I check into Facebook like once a month, say sorry, I don't just check this very often, and then LinkedIn I use, and so there's because I'm old, and so but I think that there's so many messaging apps and so many ways for people to communicate with each other. I don't know if this rises at this point to. I mean, I get that the Wall Street Journal had a great article and Google's very upset.
We're debating that actually.
I just don't. I know. What I'm saying is that they have an article about it or whatever. But what I'm saying is that I just don't know if it really impacts anybody, because if you have that, you just move to another platform, and so it's not the only thing we have access to.
Isn't this a big opportunity? And clearly Google fumbled this, but isn't this a big opportunity for somebody, maybe it's Signal, to come along and say to the U.S., we've got a cross-platform solution that does everything. Maybe it doesn't do memojis. Is that? I mean, that's what Apple's trying to do, is add things that only Apple can do.
Emojis are pretty cool. They're really,
yeah. But I mean, you can add. I mean, everybody Snap and everybody has some sort of memoji that's not as maybe
again. I mean,
cool as Apple.
If it's a very fragmented market, and people pick the ones that they want to do, and
that's part of the problem. The
high school students will,
for historic reasons that WhatsApp exists, is because SMS messaging was so expensive around the world that people didn't want to use it. And here in the United States, we didn't use it because it was so difficult. Because on early phones, before the iPhone, you had to use T9, and it was almost impossible to message. And they even had, you might remember, like on the Tonight Show, they'd have races among T9 people and stuff.
Or you used BBM, right? That was like that was
BBM, but that was another lock-in, right?
I remember being in 2005, being in Africa and watching everybody texting, and I was like, "What are they doing?
Exactly.
Like what is this?"
I had the same experience. I was sitting outside Notre Dame before the iPhone came out, and every French person was staring at their phone. I thought, this is really bizarre.
Going back to BBM for a minute, like if you didn't have BBM at that point in time, you could not work on Wall Street or date on Wall Street. That was like your complete social circumstance.
Well, there was a moment in time when the U.S. government said we can't let BlackBerry fail because everybody in government uses BlackBerries.
Yeah. Well, and I think that Google has a longer term problem, which is probably one of the reasons they're a little stressed about it, is that there's this one experience that all these teenagers are using Apple products, and not really interested in the Google product. The other problem is that their Chromebooks have been a huge success business wise, but I can tell you my kids hate them. Like, they hate them. And so the problem is that they just attach them to school. Like, when they get out of school, I don't know if they'll ever want to see a Google product again. And so they have while they've been successful at getting their products in there, the products lack vision most of the time, and they're utilitarian, but they're not, they are, generally kind of mushed down to a lowest common denominator situation, which gets them out to a lot of places, but doesn't provide a great experience. And I think that's been one of their problems, that and the short attention span.
Yeah, well, this is Ron's headline in Ars Technica. After ruining Android messaging, Google says iMessage is too powerful. Please stop kicking our butts so badly. Google failed to compete with iMessage for years now. It wants Apple to play nice. And RCS, I agree, is not the solution. Honestly, I don't think Google or Apple should have dominance in this. They're not even close. Like, nobody has any dominance, like, other than WhatsApp. I mean, but I don't think that they don't.
Regionalized.
It's regionalized. It's broken up. I mean, nobody. This is a perfect example of a market that there is no. Like, there's no dominance of. There's some people have larger percentages, but in Apple and Google are definitely not one of them. So they are it's a very fragmented market. And there's a lot of competition. I have a whole page on my phone.
That's in the U.S., right? In other countries,
everywhere.
There are dominant.
Well, it's mostly WhatsApp.
Well, Brazil, as somebody just said, in Brazil, if you don't use WhatsApp, you're out of luck.
As soon as I leave the country, I have to be. I'm on WhatsApp the whole time.
Yeah. I didn't have WhatsApp till we went to Mexico, and then I realized the only way I could message Mike and Amira was through WhatsApp. So I had to install it and reactivate my account. But I don't want it to be Facebook either. I don't think that's a great solution either.
To me, that just illustrates the scale of the problem. That there are so many people that for my address book needs to make a note of, hey, if you send a text message to this person, they will never see it. If you send this person,
but wait a minute, doesn't SMS work for everybody? I mean, isn't that the lingua franca?
Well, I'm sorry. I'm using this as a broad example where everyone has that messaging app or that service that gets their full and daily attention.
Right.
I'm just like Alex, where I will be shocked to find out that like my aunt sent me this really beautiful message on Facebook Messenger, so I didn't see it for like 3.5 weeks, and I have to like call her and say, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. And this is and if you're talking to somebody who doesn't really check, they have turned off notifications on their SMS app because they feel as though that's always going to be a scammer. That's not someone who knows to get in touch with them via Signal or via WhatsApp. We have the situation where I think that I've sent someone a message, but I don't know if it's through a means that they're going to pay attention to. And if we had, if SMS were, if the standard carrier-based messaging service were a lot more robust and had the features and the muscularity of a lot of these third-party apps, we might see a reduction in this. And I'm on the same boat with everybody else. I hate the fact that I've got WhatsApp, I've got it frozen on my phone because I just hate the idea of any sort of a Facebook-owned mobile app on my mobile device. It's just anathema to everything that I want my phone.
Yeah, Messenger, same thing, exactly. And yet, by the way, both platforms do all of the things that people want. I mean, they're great ways to share.
I go to LinkedIn once a year, and there's 80 messages waiting for me, Leo. I just can't keep up.
It's so funny. Lisa and I were just talking about that the other day. People message her and me too, on LinkedIn. And it's like, what? Yeah. I
see it once a year.
I wish I could remember the story years ago when Elon Musk launched, I don't know whether it was SpaceX or Tesla, or I think he was staffing up on a big way on a new project, and some engineer like tweeted out that I finally got caught up on my LinkedIn messages, found that I actually got like an email from Elon Musk's like top recruiter like a year and a half ago asking if I'd like to join the new team. Like, oh dear.
Hey, speaking of which, maybe Elon should do a messaging platform.
But
it feels like somebody could come along. It'd have to be somebody we trust.
Blockchain.
But it'd have to be somebody well-known
8 months
enough.
away from shipping a perfect product.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
That won't work either. Moxie Marlin Spike has just stepped down as CEO of Signal, but I still think Signal has great potential.
It's great. They're worried about the commerce, though. They're worried the commerce is going to break it open.
Well, and they're putting Bitcoin in it, or a crypto in it, which I think is everything's got crypto in it now, and I really feel like that's such a mistake. But
the AP is selling NFTs of their photographs. I don't know what world I live up to.
Speaking of which, and this relates to what you were talking about, Alex, in terms of the power of platform. Moxie wrote, this seems completely different from what we were talking about, but it's not. My first impressions of Web3. He's talking about Web3, and it was a really good piece but the point is actually you could say replace Web3 with iMessage or messaging. These are the important points he makes. People don't want to run their own servers and never will. That's absolutely God's truth. Even big companies don't run their own servers anymore. Yep. So that means a truly decentralized system is not going to happen because people don't want to run their own servers. A protocol moves much more slowly than a platform. And this is to your point, Alex, which is the platform, in other words, Apple, can develop so much more quickly than a protocol. In fact, he gives us an example, IRC, which we love and use. He says people are still trying to standardize sharing a video reliably over IRC. Meanwhile, Slack lets you create custom reaction emojis based on your face. And that's the point, is that a single centralized company-owned platform is always going to iterate much, much faster than a protocol. So that's why his position is why Web3 is hopeless. But you're never going to have it's just going to be another platform. It's going to be run by the big platforms. Many have said that, including Jack Dorsey of Twitter. But I think it also applies to messaging. This is why RCS is struggling to keep up with Apple's messaging. And really, Google blew it because Google could potentially have done something with the power of the messages.
Now, at the time, admittedly, I was contracting heavily with Google, for Google, my company was. But when Hangouts was out, we were using it probably more than anything else with everyone. And it was a great platform, and you could switch from video to audio to, you had all these things all set up, and it was probably the best platform out there across the board for all the things that you wanted to do. And then, they had some internal politics, and it ended. Like, that's what happened. I mean, like, there were some internal issues, and then for political issues, it just gone.
So them whining about RCS, I have to agree with Ron Amartyo, is a little bit, play me.
If they'd won, they wouldn't be saying anything, right? Like, if they owned WhatsApp and Messenger and Instagram DM equivalents, they wouldn't be saying anything. Right?
And Ron's point also, and I think is well taken, is RCS is not a better alternative to anything. It's out of date. It's antiquated. There's a lot of problems with it.
And the hard part is that there's so many players. Well, when you have so many players and you're trying to do a protocol, it's almost never going to work.
Yes, platforms beat protocols.
It's just going to always be this thing that is because there's just everybody has their own thing that they think is absolutely important, and I won't move forward if I don't have this. And it's different for everyone. So you end up with this kind of lowest common denominator moving in a crawl space, and this industry, all of these industries are moving too fast to be slowed down by that process, and I think that's the issue. No one really wants to do it other than Google, because Google doesn't really have anything else. Like, they don't have any solution there.
So
they're not going to.
So the carriers have been dragging their feet. They finally came along, but it's not going to. So
no one wants to be connected to the carrier because no one likes the carriers. Like, that's the problem, is we all are frustrated with our experience. Like, I won't buy a phone from a carrier because I don't want to deal with them.
In fact, that's maybe part of Apple's success with the iPhone, is that they were able to surmount the carrier hegemony and do their own thing. So, so history showed us that even though U.S. was laggard in SMS, eventually we caught up. Maybe now we're in the same boat where we're laggard with centralized messaging, because we have the same problem we had with SMS, which is there's all these different platforms and there's no unified way of talking except SMS to everybody. Maybe, do you think WhatsApp will become dominant, or something will become dominant in the years to come, just as SMS finally took over in the U.S.?
I don't think so. I think they're just going to keep on being fragmented. Like, I have a whole page on my iPhone that is just
terrible. It's such a terrible experience.
At this point, I just don't know how you fix it. We can say that it is a terrible experience, but it's not. This is one of those ones that I just don't know if it's fixable. Like, I think we can say, oh, it should be some way, but.
Yeah. Remember, like, when Brazil would shut down WhatsApp for a day for some legal reason, and the entire country would stop, and they'd have to put it back up.
Yeah,
it's just like the power of these. Or WeChat in China is how they do. Like, you live on WeChat. It doesn't even matter about Android or iPhone very much anymore. You live on WeChat, and the government's control of it.
Yeah,
right.
Although, as Moxie and others have pointed out, that WeChat is far from end-to-end encrypted. I don't know if people care about end-to-end encrypting. For a while, I was really pushing Telegram, which I love. Has all the features and then some of a great chat app. If everybody in the United States suddenly said, "Let's use Telegram," I'd be so happy. But it's not necessarily secure. But that's neither here nor there.
Signal's probably the most secure, and for the folks that I talk to at Signal, a lot of us have like expiring. Like an expiring message, because you're just talking, right? And so you just let it expire every day.
Problem with Signal still is that it's tied to your phone number, although that they're working on a way around that.
Which is like RCS, right? That's still the phone number is the...
Yeah. You need some sort of universal ID, a unique ID, a GUID. Every human should have their own GUID.
Or just allow email addresses. Like just allow email addresses. It would solve a lot of this for people.
Yeah. Email's nice because you can, if you're at all sophisticated, and even if you're not, you can create dummy addresses that you can use that are anonymous but dedicated, that kind of thing.
That does cut both ways. If there are circumstances under which you really want to transport in which the person who's participating in this messaging app has at some point demonstrated that, hi, I am a real person. Hi, here is an address where I'm billing stuff to, establishing stuff like that, as opposed to, hi, I know that I can get a free email address at gmail.com, and so that I can pretend to be a real estate empire.
Steve Gibson's a fan.
It's not the top of the list, but it's there.
Steve Gibson's a fan of Threema, which, by the way, I think the Swiss military just announced is the only messaging platform that can be used by the Swiss military.
Threema, all kinds of military.
And they guard the Pope.
Yeah. No, I don't think the Swiss guards are actually Swiss. Are they? I don't know. Are they? I'll have to ask Father Robert.
I would be so disappointed. if that's not true, I'm going to be so disappointed.
They have damn nice outfits. Anyway, the Threema, THREEMA.ch, has a mechanism, and this is why Steve likes it, for identifying people. You exchange a Threema code, and if you feel certain that the person you're talking to is the person who's sending you that code, you can lock that in and then know that that's who I'm talking to without tying it to any central authority. The ideal way to do it is meeting in person, but there are other mechanisms for doing that. That's kind of the problem with PGP.
Pokémon.
You have to have PGP for a while recommended signing parties where you'd all get together in a room and sign each other's key.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no.
Regular people don't do that stuff. That's why it makes it inaccessible to them.
Yeah, and Threema might even be more complicated than it needs to be. Threema is now open source. So the reason I did not agree with Steve that Threema was the right choice is he really liked the dot system they used of authentication, but they weren't open source at the time. They have now open sourced their software, and I think that Threema might be the right choice. But I could say that technically, there's no way to convince family and friends to use it. I tried to get my family to use Jitsi instead of Zoom for two whole years of pandemic, and it never happened.
VHS beat beta for a reason, Leo. People don't care about the technology. They like the worst stuff often wins.
Yeah, they don't care.
Yeah. But one part of, I think something that's going to be, hopefully will be an influence on this, is that more and more like national militaries are saying, okay, here are the chat apps you are not allowed to install on any of your phones. There's the only approved list of phones, of apps that we're going to get. Not all those choices are going to be pro-consumer, because I'm sure that the military themselves would like to be able to take a peek into their people who work for them, their phones from time to time as it is. But it does indicate that there's a spreading awareness that you have to know who you're sending your message through. The fact that it's, quote, end-to-end encrypted, unquote, is it really end-to-end encrypted, or is the company that's running this service saying, oh, well, to make sure that we're giving you the greatest, highest quality service, we will from time to time be able to take a look at your traffic just to verify that we're giving you the best service possible. Right? Yes. Right.
Well, and this is why, of course, everyone was so freaked out about Huawei. like that's, I mean, it was a real problem,
because
you know.
and
on the
wire.
You start putting those switches. Yeah. You put those switches everywhere, and it's a true issue.
So the biggest problem, though, with using, say, Threema, and the reason iMessages wins, is if somebody's not using Threema, you can't message them through Threema. But with iMessages, you always have this SMS fallback.
Yeah.
And so that there is, in theory, there is no one you can't contact. It's not perfect, but there's no one you can't contact with iMessage.
It's also the default. Like it's just built into your phone. Like you have no idea. Like it's the SMS.
And you
app.
don't know anything about it. Yes.
Yeah, and it's just iMessage, and that's one of the reasons why. Like first, iMessage for Android isn't a clear win, because people would have to install it and use it the way they install and use WhatsApp. And people like their defaults. They like WhatsApp. They like what they're using already. But also, there's just not that level of integration, and that's, I think, the carrier. We forget about this stuff, but like Scott Forrestal spent a long time trying to get a carrier solution before they made iMessage, and he just could not get them to agree on anything. So they eventually made iMessage, and even then, the carriers were super angry about it for a really long time, because I believe Nokia admitted once that SMS messages were the most profitable legal business ever devised by human beings at the height of their revenue streams.
They're just printing money.
Yeah, it was. They were charging 25 cents for carrier channel communications. So this is a very different world than when a lot of stuff was developed.
Yeah. Well, I guess there's really no answer.
Yeah. So long as we don't throw our hands up in the air and say it's an unsolvable problem, let's not try to improve things for again a basic technology that benefits so many people in so many different ways. There are always going to be ways we can improve it. If we're not looking for something that's perfect, if we're not looking for something that will the one message, the one true ring to hold upon us all, let's just keep making things better. And I do think that an app like iMessage can be made better. I do believe that SMS could be made better.
And we know what the real answer is going to be, right? It's going to be iMessage Plus, where for $3 a month, Android and iOS users get gold bubbles. Then you're like, you
gold bubbles.
I think the reality is that's part of the reason that all these other messaging apps have sprung up is because RCS and SMS and all these are so far behind. And I think that that's why I just don't think any of these no one's going to bother with these other formats, because they're not they're already way past it, and why would they go? Not just Apple, but
globally,
all the messaging.
They didn't have the infrastructure, and the costs were extreme. Like outside North America, it was incredibly expensive, and the infrastructure was terrible, and the carriers did not cooperate. And BBM, and then people used to buy just BBM plans for their phones 10 years ago. It would cost almost nothing, especially in emerging markets. And then there was like WhatsApp plans. That was the only way that they could communicate, because even voice was way too expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just don't. I think I do think that this was solvable a decade ago. I don't think it's. I do think that it's going to continue to just be something that's fragmented. I think that there is not. You can't fix everything, and I think this one's going to be hard to fix.
I'm going to hold up my Threema QR code for anybody. Now, you like see me. Code? No one else could fake this. I should probably put my face in front of it.
But Memojis, you're going to be giving up your Memojis.
I don't like there is one use for Memojis I really like. When now on the modern Mac,
use that as my pick.
You use your Memoji as a pick, and then when you put your finger on wrong, it goes. It looks at you. Good. It makes fun of you.
That's the best feature.
But that's
it is literally the best.
Your VR avatar. Like that, that's why they built it.
Is it going to be my VR avatar? Because what's nice is you can change it. So I just put a mask on. I had a Mexican hat on when I was in Mexico and a serape. I can change it. I love that.
When you're in the Apple metaverse, that's going to be you, Leo.
Oh.
But I got to tell you, if people listening haven't done this, if you change your avatar, your login image to your Memoji if you're on Monterey, it's like literally, in my opinion, I know there's been a lot of new updates in Monterey. It's like one of my best
feature.
It's the one that brings me the most joy. I mistype like 3 or 4 times every time I go into a new computer. I'm like, oh, let's see what he does. Let's see what he does. Let's see what he does.
He shakes his head at you. Yeah, he's got a real personality.
Rolls his eyes. Yeah. He's like, oh, and it's not awesome. The same. It's like a random. It's like sometimes he's really disgusted with you, and sometimes he's just like no, and so it's like a little slot machine of reactions, and it's so much fun. So it's
I wouldn't put up with that with a coworker. I don't know why anybody else thinks that they should put up with it on something that I paid $1,000.
It's like those restaurants that yell at you, Andy.
The new cruelty.
Let me see if I can find. I showed this before, but I'll show it again. This is an example from Daniel Yout of what your Memoji does. If you see, it follows your mouse around. And it's not a great.
And he looks down while you're typing. So you
looks
put it
down
in there,
when you're typing.
Looks down while you're typing. Like, look at that. Like what you're
scrutinizing you.
Yeah, and if you get it, if you do it wrong, it shakes his hand at you. Here, what he's going to be unhappy with your password. Oh, it didn't do it. I didn't do it.
Oh, it's so good. It's
Isn't
so
that
good.
fun? I love it.
Just doesn't have Dalrymple scale beards, but that's not a solvable problem.
Yeah. Oh, maybe this is an Apple video. I should probably see if I can find the Apple video. It sounds like this is an Apple video.
Yeah.
Because I hear a voice.
It's so much fun.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
But it's also a really good way to boil water to get people used to seeing themselves in an avatar, digital, 3D, augmented reality, virtual way.
Yeah. Do you think that's the secret agenda of all of this? Is to get
no, it wasn't designed like Apple. Often people think Apple have a master plan, and then you talk to them like, oh no, like we had no idea, but it was super convenient that we had this thing that we could use, already and waiting for us.
I think that's how the tech industry kind of works, isn't it? It's like, oh, there's a good use for it. If it weren't for Chris Messina, we wouldn't know about hashtags. If Twitter finally realized the @ meant something and started to implement it, all of that just serendipitous.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give up hope. Maybe the forces will align, and at some point we'll have a universal messaging system in the U.S. as the rest of the world does.
It'll be email.
Email, yeah. Oh, there's a solution.
I hate email.
Standard.
It's standard. You're right.
People think that they're communicating with me when they email me. No. It's just a mountain over there that you're adding your bit to. That's all.
The price, like the Pixel does such a good job navigating phone trees. I wish it would just navigate Gmail for me. Because so much Gmail I don't need to respond to. Just let the Pixel handle. I'd leave it on and just let it be my mail dummy for the whole year.
Hey, let's take a little break for a word from our sponsor, MacBreak Weekly on the air. We did find a little something. Thank you, Wall Street Journal, for that stupid article. gave us food for thought, and Ron Amadio in Ars Technica as well. Our show today brought to you by New Relic. If you are an engineer, a sysadmin, if you have to monitor performance of an app or a network, you know the name New Relic. I know you do. just, you've been through this. 9 p.m. You're winding down. Maybe you're thinking about, I'll settle down to an advent of code problem or something, and then your phone buzzes with an alert. Something's broken. You're already thinking, what could be wrong? And then think about this. This is a nightmare. Is it the back end? Is it the front end? Is it global? Is it just one server? Is it the network? Is it the cloud provider? Do we have slow queries on our MongoDB? Did I introduce a bug in my last deploy? The mind reels. And now your whole team is scrambling from tool to tool, messaging person to person to find and fix the issue. And it's all because you're in this fog, this cloud of unknown, this cloud of mystery. Wouldn't it be nice if you could clear up the cloud and actually see what's going on? This is what New Relic is all about. And what's sad to me is, according to New Relic, only half of all organizations currently implement some form of observability for their networks and systems. That means the other half is in that fog, that shroud of war, that mystery where they just don't know what's going on. The report showed how maintaining network observability continues to be an issue for companies around the world, but it won't happen if you get New Relic or get the boss to get New Relic. Actually, what's cool about New Relic, you can install it right now for free. You don't have to get the boss's permission. You don't have to write a check. No credit card even required. So you can start using it now. In fact, I think that's how a lot of our organizations start using New Relic. Then they realize its value and they expand. New Relic has 16 different monitoring products. Normally, you'd have to buy them separately, that you can use to see your entire stack in one place. You get, of course, application monitoring. You can build right into your apps, 8PM, unified monitoring for apps and microservices. If you're using Kubernetes, I hope you know about Pixie. You can get instant Kubernetes observability with Pixie. Very important on those clusters. Distributed tracing, you can see all your traces without management headaches, so you can find and fix issues fast. You've got network performance monitoring, so you don't have to guess where performance issues start. You can ditch data silos for a system-wide, correlated view. It's just a breath of fresh air. You're going to be so happy. More importantly, you can actually pinpoint issues down to a line of code. If you use the APM, your symbol table is available. It'll actually say, it's this function, this procedure, this object that's dying on you. That's why the devs and ops teams at DoorDash use New Relic. GitHub uses New Relic. Epic Games uses New Relic. It's more than 14,000 companies use New Relic to debug and improve their software. And for the rest of you, you have my deepest sympathy. I don't know how do you live? Whether you run a cloud-native startup or a Fortune 500 company, it'll take you 5 minutes to set up New Relic. And as I said, you can get access to the entire platform and 100 gigabytes of data free forever. And that's a lot, by the way. Without a credit card, free forever. Look, that 9 p.m. call is just waiting to happen. Get New Relic before it does. Sign up at New Relic, NEWRELIC.com/MacBreak. NEWRELIC, newrelic.com/MacBreak. Time to get out of the dark ages and into the light. newrelic.com/MacBreak. We thank him so much for supporting MacBreak Weekly. I told him, I said, no, you know what? There are lots of Apple people who would use this. You MacBreak folks, you show them. Now, you show them that I didn't make a mistake here. newrelic.com/MacBreak. Oh, let's get back.
Are, Leo. Where the nerds are.
Where the nerds are. That's right. Where the nerds are. So Apple is going to have to bend in South Korea. They are going to start allowing an alternative payment system because South Korean courts said you have to, unlike here in the United States. That decision.
Did they say it? Did they say it like Trump, Sylvester Stallone in Judge Dredd, like "We are the law"? And then Apple just had to.
They said it like in Squid Game. do this or else. Apple will allow alternative payment systems in South Korea, complying with a new local law that bans App Store. By the way, it was called the anti-Google law because it affects Google's Android Play Store as well. And Google has already done this in November. In November, Google implemented it. Apple, as slowly as possible, bans App Store operators from forcing their own in-app payment systems. The law went into effect in September. In November, Google pledged to provide an alternative payment system on its App Store in Korea at a slightly reduced service charge. Apple says it's going to provide an alternative payment system at a reduced service charge compared to the 30%. They have just turned in their compliance plans to the Korean Communications Commission, the KCC, but they did not say dates. I'm sure at some point Korean law will start saying, you got to do this. But they are moving forward anyway, or at least apparently moving forward to do that.
Yeah,
we saw Google's already, right?
Vulnerability.
Yeah, Google apparently, you see, again, I don't know.
15% and 11% if it's off the store, but you still have to pay them commission. I think that's how it works.
Yeah, isn't that what Apple said is, we'll just bill you for the difference.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and good luck to everyone who gets audited. That's the thing, is that you're going to get, for companies that go down this path. I mean, they're gonna, if they make any significant amount of money, Apple, there's going to be legal cases around it, and whatever they say.
The game theory is just like you price it enough down that nobody's going to actually do it. Like they have the appearance of freedom, but it's like, for 4%, I'll let Apple handle the taxes. That's not a problem.
Well, and I think that on a smaller market, having this happen might be good for Apple. We'll see how it goes, but the user experience is not going to be as good. And this is a place where it is fixable for users right now, which is that they don't, this is something that's being pushed by the developers, but not by the users. And this is the user experience is going to suck. And because now, I mean, anybody who's had an app that on Apple TV that makes you go and sign into something else and fill a bunch of stuff out. I mean, welcome to the future.
Yeah, that's
welcome to the future on your phone. And so we'll see. I mean, my guess is that people are going to do this and people are not going to like it. So,
well, we already have this problem with other areas of the App Store experience, so I don't have a problem with that. Also, I think if Apple is going to continue to boast how much money that they're making for developers, they need to acknowledge that developers are their customers as well. And if this is something that a lot of developers are asking for, they should be able to provide it. And thirdly, it's not as long as they're not forcing developers to make a choice that they don't want to make, I think it's all to the good. I mean, in the abstract, I don't deny that if I were a small to mid-range developer, I would much rather have Apple do all the accounting and just simply take a check. But maybe that would not be what I would decide. Maybe I would be part of a larger company, and that wouldn't make sense for me. It's all about does it make sense for Apple to make this a requirement? If not, then they should make that an option.
Actually, maybe this is coincidental, but Apple announced how much revenue it's generated for developers in the App Store for 2021, and it's about $5 billion a month, $260 billion since the App Store launched in 2008. That's up $60 billion from the figure a year ago. So Mark Gurman says that to do the math. This was an announcement it made yesterday as part of a summary of the performance of its digital services across 2021. The company said the App Store generated a new yearly record for App Store developer earnings last year.
Yeah, but as we found out last year, we're not talking about every developer reaping a bonanza. We're talking about a small percentage of one aspect of the App Store marketplace. And even then, it's not as though all iPhone users are making those huge contributions to that bottom line. It is a very, very disproportionate amount of iPhone users that are contributing the king's ransom of that percentage. So it's
Leo
not
and his Simpsons tapped out donuts is really what it is. Yes. Let's be honest about this.
Yeah, but yeah, that's what I'm going on about. I think for Apple, I don't think that it's as easy for Apple to make that as a boast. It still works as a demonstration of here's how well that our services are making. Here's the contributions that all that work that we're doing is making to our bottom line. So long as they don't claim that, yes, you see, we're a benevolent organization that creates jobs and creates new business opportunities. It's like, excuse me.
But they actually do.
Testimony.
I mean, that's they are right. They actually do produce a lot of opportunity. Like that. That's the only problem with that.
Not the way that they would.
$60 billion.
Like if $59 billion goes to Epic and $1 billion goes to small guys, it's still something.
But it's not 60. The thing is, again, anecdotally, I know a lot of developers that are either making some side part or not working anymore because of what they made, that they wrote out of a whim and put on the App Store. Now, you know, is the right market and the right thing. And every market has a lot of people that don't figure out how to nail it just right. So whether you're, you know, talk about like the life. Yep, talk about the investment and how long a restaurant lasts. You know, like there's a huge investment in restaurants and most of them go under. You know, and so the thing is that you don't have to go buy a restaurant or even a food truck.
Slow capital. It's literally brain time.
And really, like now that you can take Swift Playgrounds and publish to the App Store.
Amazing, yeah.
You know, the thing is that you can find little things that you want to solve. And are you going to retire on it? Maybe not. But there are a lot of people making a reasonable amount of money, you know, on this market. And it is, as someone who's, I mean, I've sold stuff on many different platforms. Currently, the iPhone is one of the best opportunities for an individual in the world.
Especially for scammers. Costa Eleftherio has already posted another, just in response to this, how to make $13 million on the App Store. This is a guy who, like, as you said, Alex, is probably on the beach. Make a basic app people might be searching for example, a volume booster. Charge an absurd $10 a week, $520 a year for an auto-renewing subscription that's easy to sign up for, but much harder to cancel. Buy lots of fake reviews on a daily basis and profit. Right. And so this is a specific example he's using here. And I know because my mom signed up for a memory cleaner. And I became aware of it when I saw the weekly $5 bill. I knew that she had gotten scammed. And it's an easy thing for anybody to get scammed on. You know, and if you're not paying attention to your credit card statements, it might take a while for you to notice.
Yeah. I will say that at this point, though, the Google Play Store, I won't buy anything that's not a major brand because I just have no idea what I'm going to get.
Except, okay, but if Apple's going to make this big deal about how curated the store is and how careful we are, these things should not continue to happen. And I praise Costa for bringing these up.
Sure, like he's such a dork. Anyway, so the like he just he goes into this thing like, well, you see, like everything has an exception. Everything. You know, like there is no place that you're 100% safe. There is no place where you're 100% secure. You know, and the idea that we're not, I mean, the fact is the curation makes it much less. Is it going to make it to zero? That's impossible. You know, and are there going to be problems that you have to deal with on a market this size? I mean, anybody who thinks that you can just get rid of all of these things is naive.
Anybody, I will counter you, Alex. Anybody who thinks Apple isn't happy about this because it gets 15 to 30% of the revenue is naive. Apple is not incented to fix this.
They are incented to fix it because the people complain about it.
Why does it keep happening?
Because well, again, it's impossible to make something completely.
But every day, moderators review worldwide App Store charts for quality and accuracy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they put, and you know,
the apps you love from a place you can trust.
Yeah. If Apple wants to dunk on Android for doing this, they really have to have I sometimes think that this messaging denies the fact that, as I agree with you, Alex, this is not a problem that can be 100% solved. And I also think that you're free to not buy stuff off the Android Google Play Store. But I think that's a really extreme reaction. I don't think that's really warranted. But it's my difficulty is always with Apple trying to dunk on other platforms, mostly Android, but other platforms as well. When if you're gonna dunk on somebody else, okay, fine. Let's open up the floor for Q&A because there's a lot of questions that Apple.
Well, and I would submit it's easy to spot an app that's charging $5 a week.
Yeah,
I don't think that's a hard thing to find.
That seems like something that you want a human being to look at that and say, okay, is this a Salesforce enterprise scale app that is designed to basically make people $100 a week based on their productivity and their ability to follow through on projects, or are they looking for a memory cleaner? And that does seem like something that should be flagged really, really quickly.
There's a couple of things that I thought was really interesting with this. Some people did look into it because this is like an especially egregious example. And it turns out, and again, like you can talk about any one specific example and it may or may not help fulfill the pattern, but this app was a legitimate app. It was not only picked by Apple for editorial review many times, It was featured in a bunch of tech publications, and it seems like it's under new ownership, and they didn't like the amount of money it was making, and the person has a background in internet advertising, so they basically decided to scam as much money out of it as they could. But it's been updated as a real, like, legitimate, people really liked it app for many years. So that's probably why it didn't get in like the initial scrutiny it deserved. But also, like, once you start arbitrating price, like if Apple comes in and says your app is not, and this is also Neil Seibart's been making these arguments too. If Apple starts coming in and saying, well, your app is really only worth $5 a month and your app is really only worth $10 a month, it's like, it's one of those things where we get angry at Twitter and Facebook about. It's like, who are you to arbiter? But also, why aren't you arbitrating? And it's a very difficult line to walk between allowing enough freedom and dictating enough control. And the last thing I'll add is I've talked to Apple engineers and Google engineers on Google Play and YouTube engineers about this problem in general. And the consistent answer I've gotten, and these are all really good people, like these aren't like people you think are like enjoy the scam aspect of it. These are like really caring, considerate, creator first, user first people, is that at this scale of user generated content, it is almost impossible to get every edge case. So they work on the middle. Like they try to make sure the middle is as solid as possible, knowing that they'll ban some people by accident on one end and they'll allow some scams through on the other, and they'll keep adjusting where that middle is because it's always changing. Sorry. And they're facing incredibly well-funded bad actors whose only mission it is to get these apps and these scams on. And the minute they change something, those apps are changing things too. So it's continual cat and mouse and whack-a-mole. Yeah. And they put a ton of resources into it, but they just will be honest and admit that it is not a solved problem at their scale yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I would address one point though, that Apple already is making those kind of value judgments for there is an argument to be made, as silly as it is, that, well, who are you to decide that I can't have a fart app on my iPhone? It's like, if you're rejecting my app because you don't think it adds value, maybe if there are 500 people amongst the entire user base that thinks it has incredible value, who are you to decide that those people shouldn't have access to an app that they want? So it's not a great extension to basically have them look at problems like that, especially given how old this kind of scam is, where companies will swoop in, find an app that has probably played itself out in terms of its earning potential for its original creator, say, hey, we'll give you $150,000 for rights to your app, and then basically, guess what? We're going to rebuild it. We're going to have all kinds of trackers in it now. We're going to have all kinds of malware in it right now. We're going to change the pricing schedule. So you're absolutely right. And I've had the exact same. Isn't it a little bit heartbreaking when you're talking to engineers and executives who are working these problems that know that all they can do is control the rate of the flooding. They can't stop the flooding at all. They know that, and if they do their jobs really, really well, all they can do is stop the rate of flooding from increasing incredibly. So it is a heartbreaking thing to take a look at. However, it is something that whenever you find an incident like this, you are hoping that it is lighting fires in the right places and making them ask questions about how can we do this a little bit better. And once again, this is just one of my little buttons that, again, if a company, whether it's Google, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Twitter, whether it's anybody, wants to dunk on its competitors saying, oh, we are more private, or oh, we do better content creation than these other people who are not being responsible, again, you have to open up the floor to Q&A, and that people who know the whole breadth of the story are going to start asking questions about, okay, but what about this? If you are saying that this is a defining characteristic of your service over your competitors, can you absolutely back that up without having to be sued and have a deposition process in which we can actually get access to your internal emails?
I would just have someone monitoring that dude's Twitter account and then just yote any app that he tweets about almost immediately.
I mean, I got to point out,
monitor his Twitter account and monitor the top 100.
The Verge wrote this article in April of last year. This is not a new problem, and I don't see why Apple couldn't say, let's just check everything that charges more than, say, $5 a week, or make it $10 a week. And just check it.
Or the top 100 in each category, right? Like, there's that one person whose job it is every day to look at the top 100 apps, because those are the ones getting 99% of the money.
I really question their desire to do that. I just don't think they want to do that. Yeah. And I don't think if they don't do that, I think they should stop saying you can trust us with the App Store. Period. And I know you guys. I know, Alex, you disagree.
No, I did ask someone at not Apple. I don't want to say who it is because I don't want to put anyone in a bad light. But I did ask someone fairly high up at a not Apple company who has a similar problem. And they're like, "Why can't you just look at the top 100 of that?" And he's like, "Because that's the top 100 that got through. Like we stopped the 300,000 other ones that didn't get through.
Good.
And you only see the ones on Twitter that break through.
Good.
And we try to stop those too. But like it's one of those things where the failures are reported and then the successes never are.
Yeah, you tell that to my mom. Okay, just tell that to my mom.
I agree with you.
It's not, people are spending hundreds of dollars unnecessarily, and Apple's getting 30%.
To Apple's credit, I really do enjoy the fact that they're handling subscriptions at their end, and that it's usually possible for me to simply say, "Oh, I didn't know I was being charged for this." Boom. Guess what? Next time you try to bill Apple for this stuff, you're not going to be allowed to permit to get that charge through.
I've had a lot of them where I've complained about it, and they'll say like, I've gone back and said these last 6 months I just didn't notice that I was getting charged for this, and it gets sent back to me. like it just goes. Apple's just like, okay, and I don't know what happens to the developer on the other end of that, because Apple probably just claws it away from them and hands it back to me. So it doesn't, so I think that I've had a lot of pretty amazing experiences with just being able to complain about the fact that I had this thing, and there's a whole little system on your thing
Apple's
to do that.
Apple's new logo should be "Let the buyer beware." It's up to you to find this. Ask us for a refund. We'll give it to you.
Well, I just think that we're being pretty naive.
Not trust us.
Pretty naive when you have a platform that lets you publish from a Swift playground. The number it's just the sheer numbers are massive.
Fine. Apple should say, "You can't trust us. The sheer numbers are overwhelming. We'll do our best." Not, "You can trust us." There's a difference.
They do say, well, I mean,
if they can't do the job, they shouldn't claim they're doing the job.
By that, you should say nothing is safe ever. Like nothing is safe. Well, like if you say if you can't do that, there's nothing safe if you don't allow for a 0.01. I mean, you shouldn't get on a plane, because I've seen news where planes go down. But the percentages are probably not that far apart. And so of how many scamming apps and how many planes go down are probably pretty close in percentage. And so the thing is that, so if we say that we shouldn't fly or we shouldn't you definitely should not get in a car.
No, but Delta should not advertise. Our planes never crash. And they don't, by the way.
Well, because
no one wants to be
don't,
that one,
by the way. And Apple does. They say, you can trust us. Everything's safe. This is good.
But
don't worry.
Volvo tells you it's safe.
And when my
People
mom wants to buy an
Volvos.
app, it must be safe because it's approved in the App Store. I completely disagree with you. I think Apple is abrogating its responsibility, and it's not doing Apple or consumers any favors to say, "Oh, you're doing the best you can. You keep on keeping on."
Well, I would say they're doing significantly better than everyone else. Now, you got to get, this is me acquiescing to this, because if it was me, I'd have Apple curate everything. I'd have them, go very slowly. It'd be hard to publish. And then you'd have all the developers upset that it takes them so long to get to their app, because there'd be a 2-year wait to get to publish.
All you have to do is write a filter that says it
with
charges more than $5 a week. Let's have somebody look at that. And if it's 100,000 apps, well, how many do you think it is? Is it 100,000 apps?
It could be.
So then get 5 people to look at it. I think that's doable. Apple is a $3 trillion company. I don't think we're asking too much for that. I don't. Yeah. I really don't.
I do think that we should have reasonable expectations. That I do believe that it's never something they're going to solve completely. However, I agree with most of what the rest of what you're saying. That again, take the drinking game. The drinking game phrase is dunking on competitors. Again, if Apple's going to make this a reason for people to buy their platform instead of someone else's, they are held to a much higher degree of responsibility than any of their competitors. And also, I also don't like when the argument is made that they only have so many people they can put on this task. So hire more people if it becomes a problem. Have
you ever hired more than 100 people? More than 100 people. Have you ever hired more than 100 people? Because I've hired 30, and I can, in 6 months, and I can tell you that it is a horribly hard process to do right.
I think Apple's hiring more than 30 a day, actually.
No, I'm saying what I'm saying though is that to pick the right people for the right team and to get them to fit in and not have them be problematic and not have all the other things. It's not like just to say, we should hire 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 more people that are technically sufficient to do what we're trying to do inside of a highly competitive market. Good luck. Good luck with that. And so the thing is that when people say, oh, they should just hire more people, they have never done it. Nobody who has ever done that at mass ever says that. Nobody. Only people
Alex,
who have never had to hire more than 100 people.
So adept at making excuses for Apple. I just don't understand why you.
No, I'm not. There's lots of things I don't like about Apple. I just think that this is not. It's just not. Yeah. You're not being practical. Like the thing is that there are. These are things these are hard problems, and anytime someone says something simple, you generally know they don't know about it. They don't know about it because if they knew about it, they don't understand how complicated it was.
Okay, now I absolutely need to respond to that. I have not hired 100 people at one time. However, over my 30 years as a tech reporter, I have had one-on-one conversations with CEOs of companies that have 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 110,000 people worldwide. Some of those conversations do get into operations, things like that, on situations that are not dissimilar to that. And the acknowledgement in so many words is that it's not a question of being able to do it or not being able to do it. It's a question of priorities or not priorities, which is a rational response to that sort of question. However, at no point have I ever raised that question and got the answer that, no, it's just too difficult for us to hire 2,000 people that have the specs that we want. Every single, I don't want to drift into things I'm not allowed to talk about, but when a company is launching an entirely new product category that they have never even been tangentially involved in before, they're essentially launching a company with 3,000 people. With that as a priority for this enormous company, they find those 3,000 people. So I will dismiss your insistence that the fact that I haven't hired 30 people means that I am unaware of the limitations of hiring and what can and cannot be done by a large company that has a sense of its own priorities and its resources.
Because so many people are having such an easy time hiring people right now. I hear it's super easy right now. The job market's super open.
Mm-hmm. If I were going to try to make some money right now, I would create a clone Wordle app in the App Store that had a yearly subscription. Oh, wait a minute, too late. There's already 9 of them.
Every day should be an NFT that we mint, Leo. That's how we maximize revenue on this.
Wordle, the app, which is not created by Josh Wardle, who said the entire time it's going to be free, no ads. Wordle, the app, is $10 a week, by the way, just in case you want to play this, just in case.
Oh my God, that developer, if they must have a heart of purest 24-karat gold, because they must get their inbox is filled with, "Hi, I'll give you $800,000 to take over this code project for you. We would like to load up that website with all kinds of stuff that would make us kajillions of dollars, and because we're evil people, we can sleep late at night."
Nice thing about, actually, it's only $30 a year. I take it back. It's cheap. The nice thing about it is you can do more than 5-letter words. So that's cool. You're getting something of value. And you get a nice little trophy, and you can share it with your friends. So let's take a little break. Come back. There is more to talk about. In fact, if you want to get upset, let's get upset at T-Mobile. I'm upset. But first, a word from BetterHelp. Maybe I need this right now. Maybe I do. Actually, I don't want to breach confidences. I have close friends who've used BetterHelp, therapy online, who've gotten such great value out of it. In fact, the other day I was talking to somebody who said, "Oh yeah, I found out about this incredible service through my therapist at BetterHelp that is available to all. She's using it for her son." It's really kind of a neat story. BetterHelp. And then, by the way, the timing couldn't be better as we are stuck here inside once again. BetterHelp, if something's preventing you from achieving your goals, if something's interfering with your happiness, if you feel anxiety in the pit of your stomach, check out BetterHelp.com/MacBreak. BetterHelp is a place to talk to a licensed professional therapist. It's safe, it's private, it's online, it's so easy you can start communicating in under 48 hours. Now, I want to be very clear. This is not a crisis line. So if that's not what we're offering here. It's not self-help. It's just it's professional counseling done securely online. You can send a message to your counselor anytime. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses. You could schedule weekly video, or if you don't want to be on camera, phone sessions. That's fine too. And you never have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room. It's completely private. It's really a great way to get the help you need. There's no stigma with this. This is about talking to somebody that's going to understand, that's going to make a difference in your life. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches. They do something I think is really, really important. They make it easy and free to change counselors if needed. And that is because, as good as any counselor might be, they may not be right for you. You want to find the person that's the perfect match for you. And BetterHelp makes that easy, and it doesn't cost you anything. It's, of course, more affordable than traditional offline counseling. They even have financial aid. And it's available globally. It's worldwide. You can find the particular expertise you need online. You don't have to limit yourself to counselors located near you. Finding the therapist you need, if you're just looking locally in the phone book, it's tough. With BetterHelp, it's very easy. You can get licensed professional counselors specialized in almost anything that might be bugging you: depression, stress, anxiety, relationships, sleeping, trauma, anger, family conflicts, LGBTQ matters, grief, self-esteem, and of course, anything you share is confidential. It's completely professional. It's really convenient. It's very affordable. And all you have to do, if you don't trust me, is to look at the testimonials that people post every day on their site. And I could just say I know people, many, who have used BetterHelp who are very, very happy. So many people are using BetterHelp. They're recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. This is a thing we need these days. I want you to start living a happier life today. I don't want you to suffer. There's no need to. If you're a listener, you're going to get 10% off your first month. Just go to betterhelp.com/MacBreak. This is a sponsor I can really support. BetterHelp, BetterHelp, betterhelp.com/MacBreak. Over 1 million people have taken charge of their mental health. And MacBreak Weekly, folks, you're not immune either. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Why suffer when you go to betterhelp.com/MacBreak? That's all I'm going to say about it. betterhelp.com/MacBreak. I'm a little miffed with T-Mobile. Maybe there's.
Why, Leo?
I'm just a little miffed. Well, Apple announced this really great thing called Private Relay, right? It's basically kind of a little bit like a VPN that you can use on your smartphone with your iPhone. It's kind of automatically on. If you're an iCloud subscriber, you get it.
Isn't it? I think it's automatically available. I think the user has to turn it on.
It's not on by default.
In beta, it's not on by default, no.
Once it's
and
public,
you have to subscribe to iCloud Plus to get it.
iCloud Plus. Not just any iCloud account.
Extra storage.
Yeah. So, but if you're paying for iCloud, then you have it, right? Yeah. Yes. And I get it, since I use Apple One, I'm getting it.
Yes.
T-Mobile is blocking it. They're going to start blocking
along with
it.
O2 and a whole bunch of
a lot of European carriers as well.
Right.
Now, they're saying the reason we block it, customers who choose plans and features with content filtering, for instance, parental controls, do not have access to the iCloud Private Relay because these services won't work otherwise. If you want them to work as designed, you can't use Relay, but all other customers have no restrictions. So if you have content filtering, I don't have content filtering.
It's not, but that's not what they're. I mean, that's it's silly, as you know. I mean, it's because they don't. There's two things. One is they're selling your data.
Yeah.
Well, they're selling your data in mass, and number two is they packet shape. So they want to be able to force you down to a different. Like for instance, if you open up a video app, they want to make sure that you're forced on the manifest down to a 480p signal, not the highest res that's available to you, because that would use their network, harder. And so there's a little bit of an argument for the packet shaping thing that they do, but not really. I mean, you're paying for that connection, so you should be able to get what you want to get. The content filtering is obviously a red herring.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard. I'm kind of sorry that T-Mobile got lumped into what a lot of the international carriers are doing. The international carriers are simply saying we want no part of this for the reasons that we've discussed. That we make a lot of revenue and we can make a lot more profits if we have absolute access to your traffic.
Right.
However, T-Mobile, they did quickly clarify that we're not shutting it down for everybody. Until somebody who has more knowledge about this, about how T-Mobile packages these services can explain to me how those services work, I'm willing to at least give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, because they're not shutting it down on everybody. They're saying, if you have these services that kind of require us to take a look at what your traffic is, so that we can, at your request, block content that you don't want to find its way to your phone, that's legitimate. I mean, even Wikipedia, after the service was announced, was saying that, okay, we're going to have to ask people how they feel about this, because we're using IP identification as a way of validating that the editor who's trying to edit or manage this one of these Wikipedia pages is who they say they are, because we recognize this IP address. If you're hiding your IP address, we can't validate that. So we are considering forcing people to turn that feature off if they want to continue to edit certain pages. It's causing certain knock-on effects. So it's not as though every time there's a restriction on a service or provider decides to restrict access or use of this service, it's necessarily them being scummy. However, they do have to, I think every service that does this has to demonstrate that, no, there is an actual legitimate, verifiable, technical reason why we think that this service causes a problem for certain products that we're creating. But again, mostly it is going to be, we want to manage our network our own way, which is limited, kind of neutral evil, because there is an argument that we want to be able to to have you not stream necessarily 4K on your phone if you don't have to, but mostly, again, to prevent them from trying to profiteer when you can just simply flip a switch on your iPhone and lock out a lot of what's possible there. If they're not letting you do a VPN.
In fact, I have to update this because as the show,
it's a bug.
Yeah, Mark Gurman just tweeted about 45 minutes ago. Overnight, our team identified, this is a T-Mobile response to Mark Gurman. Overnight, our team identified that in the iOS 15.2 release, some device settings default to the feature being toggled off. We've shared this with Apple. This is not specific to T-Mobile. Again, though, we have not broadly blocked iCloud Private. They say iCloud is private relay is only blocked if you have turned on content filtering. Otherwise, it should not be turned off. So
and
that's
does make
good.
Sense.
And the Europeans are, on the other hand,
they're doing it. And I have to point out, T-Mobile is Deutsche Telekom, so they are in Europe as well, and I think they are doing it in Europe. So I don't. Yeah.
I also turn it off myself sometimes. Like if I'm uploading a big file, sometimes it's just taking forever. I turn off private relay because that relay has extra whatever roadblocks in the way, and it just goes.
I guess it's important. It is important to note that it's not perfect. That there's a good reason Apple.
It's like a VPN. I have the same issue.
It's basically easy. Yeah. It's just easy VPN. Like it's just that's what they should call it. Easy VPN.
Not quite.
Like it's just,
Well, they don't because you can't tie. What is it? GeoHop like you can for some VPNs.
You can't
to get,
block
like,
geolocation.
Netflix,
in fact, at least it does country. And you can say, and in fact, I have allow it to be a little more specific, like it knows I'm in Petaluma.
For Uber Eats, right? Like you want your Starbucks. You don't want Starbucks to go to Boston. You want Starbucks to come to you.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, there are always going to be a little bit of some drawbacks using a VPN. And so those are, I guess, biting Apple a little bit.
But I think that with all of these, what we're seeing is, Apple will put it up and then people will react to it, and then Apple will tighten it a little bit. And what I think you're constantly seeing is Apple constantly looking at privacy and not necessarily, again, closing all the gates at one time, but they're just slowly just moving the gates, very, very slowly.
I love it.
This is all part of a bigger program of app transparency. Yeah, sure, doesn't have a lot of teeth yet. But if you start looking at all of these as a unified process, what you're seeing is Apple slowly closing everything in, and making it more and more private and harder and more opaque to advertisers and everyone tracking us.
Yeah. But it does show how difficult this process is going to be if people start using this feature and things stop breaking. If the things that they're counting on using stop working, that's not a result that Apple wants. If suddenly Facebook will not log them in automatically, if the Facebook says, "Ooh, we don't reckon you're logging in from a brand new IP address, therefore we're going to demand two-factor authentication right now to make sure that you are who you say you are," that's going to be a reason for a lot of people to say, "You know what? I'm going to turn this feature off, and I don't have a need to turn it on ever again." So I think there's a reason why this is an extended beta. I don't think they're necessarily having trouble implementing it. I think they're having trouble making sure that people will turn that on, get the benefits of it, and not find a good reason to turn it off.
Well, and every one of these becomes kind of a chicken, a game of chicken where you basically decide, I can't use this service. Do I care about my security and privacy, and I'm just not going to use that service anymore. In some cases, like Facebook, someone might not choose that, but they might choose it. Like, for instance, when things start, you might choose those services over the privacy. But as things move forward, when Apple Pay came out, I prioritized places, obviously, that that had Apple Pay. I just was like, cool. It was something I wanted to test, but I still pay in a lot of other places. At this point, if I go to a retail place and they don't have Apple Pay, I just set the objects down and leave. Like, literally, I don't even take them back. I just leave them on the counter. Like, you should do that. And I walk out. And so, the only place I'll pay for anything without Apple Pay is the farmer's market. So I think that, again, these are progressions of things that happen over years. And so this is just step one.
They'll find out ways to still make money off of people, even if private relay is a thing that they can't work around. So
sure.
I have to say, Retcon5 and I were talking before the show about how much we love our new M1 MacBook Pros. I bought the base model 14-inch thinking, I'm sad I'm not going to get the Max, and I think it's fantastic. It's the best laptop I've ever had. Good. He kind of agrees. So I have to say, on the one hand, I'm a little sad to report that Intel has stolen Jeff Wilcox from Apple. On the other hand, if I really think about it, it's good because Intel should be making such great chips too. It would be a good thing. Wilcox.
Qualcomm took the Nuvia guys, and now Intel's got Wilcox. I mean, Apple's going to spread silicon across to the world.
Wilcox came to Apple 8 years ago from Intel to really design the M1 architecture. He's director of Mac System Architecture, or was director of Mac System Architecture. He's moved on. He's gone back to Intel. He's an Intel fellow in the design engineering group. He's a CTO there, and so he'll be involved in designing systems on a chip for Intel.
The reality is we have to remember that the trajectory of a chip, the part that he does on a chip is probably 3, 4, 5 years out. So, Apple's probably most of those things have been already figured out as far as what needs to actually happen there. So does it change Apple's trajectory? Probably not a lot. However, for Intel, bringing someone with that capacity and that history into it really gives them a huge shot in the arm to be competitive 4 or 5 years, maybe 6, 7, 8 years out. Because that's just from the time people start doing designs to the time it ends up in silicon and ends up in mass production is a long time.
And, I just kick myself because I should have become a chip designer, not a podcaster. But
what a loss to all of us.
Like kettle chips, Leo, or
kettle chips.
Style,
Pringles, I was thinking. But
Terra chips.
We mentioned last week that Apple has apparently been paying $180,000 bonuses to engineers to keep them from leaving. Intel has a $2.4 billion fund to attract new talent or old talent back.
Facebook too. I mean,
so you got to figure Jeff probably cashed a pretty big check.
It's a good time to be an A-list engineer right now.
Yeah.
No, that's it. That's if only the entire workforce everywhere was treated this way. When you have an amazing set of gifts. Now that you've done this wonderful project, you're that much more valuable on the open market. So if your current company is not giving you the entire package that you deserve, there will be another company that will be more than happy to pay for your package. Here, just giving you a third.
It's usually better, right? Like they can justify like a pillaging bonus more than they can usually justify a salary.
It's a pillaging bonus.
Hop around.
Yes, I'm taking the pillaging
the people
bonus.
who hop around get more money, because like your people your compatriots understand it. Like if Bob or Sarah gets a bigger raise than I do, I'm mad. But if they had to bring Bob or Sarah in, and I understand they had to pay extra to attract them, I'm not so grumpy. That's just the way this works.
And I think that he's more valuable at Intel than he is at Apple. I mean, Apple probably had an opportunity to match something, to do it, and they probably made a decision that they didn't need his services as much as Intel was willing to pay him.
I'm sure that's
for it, and I'm sure that it was huge. And the thing is that for the and engineers at all of these companies are getting, $1 million. I mean, 180,000 is cute, but I know folks that get bigger stock bonuses than that. Yeah. And so that's not a big stock bonus to be thrown at somebody to make sure that they don't go anywhere. And so those golden handcuffs can get really thick, and so especially slow vesting ones and that type of. So I think that, again, and I don't think Apple necessarily looks at Intel. Intel probably looks at Apple more as a competitor because they're losing all their business. I don't think Apple is that worried about Intel catching up anytime soon. Apple really is serving its own market as effectively as it possibly can, and it's not like it's not head to head in the same way. So, but Intel definitely has to come up to speed.
And the only thing that's worth adding is that they're. Sorry, Andy, go ahead.
I was just going to quickly off of that say, I don't. Intel is in a very, very different sort of business than Apple is. Apple is building specific chips specifically for actual products that they are going to be building from end to end, and they don't have dominance in the market on any of those laptop or desktop markets. Whereas Intel, they are creating the grease for the gears of industry. They have to build chipsets that are going to satisfy every type of computer that's going to be made, supporting every single type of industry that's all over the world. So they definitely are missing a few clubs from their bag, and definitely hiring people that can give them some of the skills that they're missing right now. But that doesn't mean that Intel is a doomed company, because benchmarking on an M1 MacBook is much higher than on a comparable Intel based laptop.
And one thing I add is also, like, you see this a lot in the industry. It's like, why don't all stores just copy the Apple Store? Why don't all stores just copy IKEA? Right. Why don't all chip companies just copy what Apple's done with Apple Silicon? And it's usually not the engineers that are the difference. It's often like a philosophical thing. Beyond what Andy said, which is really true, Apple doesn't have to work as a silicon merchant. Like, they just don't. And the realities of not having to satisfy the various different needs of a bunch of other vendors is huge. But also, Apple invested 10 years in this architecture. Like, I'll joke that Apple keeps using the same bionic term again, but it's the architecture, and they put it down and they iterate year after year, and they put up with headlines saying Apple can't innovate, when Apple's like, we're not trying to innovate. In 10 years, we want to hit this target. And that takes very patient, steady progress every year. And we've seen this now with the Nuvia people who left Apple and went to work at Qualcomm, and we may see it with Wilcox at Intel, is unless you have that sort of management. Like, Johnny Cerrugi was willing to invest in this low, slow, wide approach, which was the complete opposite of what Intel wanted. They wanted a fire hose in every chipset. And they thought Apple was dumb, and Qualcomm did not understand 64-bit when Apple's like, it's not 64-bit. We got ARM to write us our own ISA, basically. You know, these were all decade-long bets, and a lot of them don't have the patience or the management to set those up. So what they're able to accomplish there is going to be different, but hopefully good to see.
Yeah, and I think that there's. Go ahead, Andy.
A lot of what everyone needs to understand is that when you have a company as large as Apple, as large as Intel, as large as Tesla, as large as any large innovative company, it's the MacBook is not necessarily Apple's product. Apple's product on an ongoing basis is the process, the resources, and the procedures that can create a product like that. And so that we're just seeing the end result of Apple's eternal project, which is to make sure that whatever they want to do, they can execute on that plan in a very, very far forward basis. And even when a company on that scale has a failure per se, yes, the product is a consumer failure. However, the process that allowed this thing to be created and developed and manipulated is actually makes the company better and stronger. It makes the next thing better and stronger.
And I think that the thing that makes Apple different as well, I mean, to just ride on that, I completely agree with that. And that Apple's ability that they write the operating system and design the end product and write many of the apps that are being used allows them to, the silicon is a different beast for them completely. And it's all part of them owning that. And I think that we'll just see them continue to take over their own silicon across the board. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we get to a point where the iPhone is like a chip. There's like a chip and a handful of little components that stick to the chip, and they just print them out that way. And so I think that that's where I think that Apple is going to keep on going, because it just gives them more control over their destiny.
I'm just checking to see if you wanted to buy a M1 MacBook right now.
I thought you were going to say cleaning cloth.
I don't know if the cleaning cloth is back in stock, but
it's back in stock as of today.
Oh, do you have a cleaning cloth?
No,
Renee, do you have a cleaning cloth?
I think one came with the XDR display, but it did.
I don't know if that's the same one as the $19 version that they're selling.
I've heard that they're very nice.
They've got Apple's logo is embedded in it. You know,
I heard they're very soft.
They better be.
I want a whole park. And I think
the word is supple.
So it's good. So there probably were like 8 million of them in a container on a ship somewhere outside of Long Beach.
In the Los Angeles port.
Yeah.
Just stuck, right?
And they just arrived. So you can order them now.
Yeah, exactly.
M1 Pros, if you get the stock model, not a BTO, February 2nd. This is on a 14-inch. M1 Max, March 4th. And that's for the stock. If you add a little memory, it's still March 4th. That's good news. So
because
you're already built.
Those are all in custom builds. Like once they start. What about if you give it the next one up, the 32 core?
Oh, let's go all the way. There's 64. March
it's just
4th.
custom build.
Yeah,
this is how long it takes us to build.
Yeah. 8 terabytes of storage, only 6,000 for a 14-inch.
But man, that'd be a great.
You know, I have to say I was so sad because I wanted to get it right away so we could talk about it, and so I had to get the base model, 512 gigs of storage, for crying out loud, like an animal. But it's really great. And you were absolutely right about the MagSafe adapter, Alex. Love it.
Isn't it so nice?
Love it. All those ports. I haven't used the HDMI port, but it feels good knowing it's there.
But you have it.
I have it.
I'm still using USB-C. Don't hate me. I'm still charging by USB-C.
I don't miss the touch bar.
I put it on my lap.
It's hysterical because at CES last week, Dell effectively announced an XPS with a touch bar instead of function keys.
Gosh.
It's got an electronic bar. It's like
mouse, right? Like it's a stealth mouse.
Someone stared copying Apple back then, and they finally came out the other end.
Got around to releasing it, I guess.
At least it's not the only Windows laptop being put onto the market. Okay,
that's true. You're not forced to get it. Although I like the XPSs, I'm just a little disappointed that it also doesn't. It has something about the trackpad is a little weird with it because it doesn't. You can't see the outline, so it must. I don't know. There's some sort of weird trackpad. But, Apple, you did it right. You got rid of the touch bar. I kept the fingerprint, which works great. And you kept even made the escape key even a little bit bigger.
It was a huge recovery. And you wonder whether that's Johnny Ive did a lot of great things, but you wonder if him moving on created the space to correct for form of a function.
It must have been, I have to think, a battle inside of Apple.
Yeah.
And Johnny says, no, we want thin, we want light, we want touch bar.
It wasn't just Johnny, but it was a battle.
Yeah, and then somebody else, probably somebody who uses Emacs, was saying, no, you need an escape key, for crying out loud. And that person finally, somehow, by sticking in
I think it helps that all of us were complaining about it. Everybody was complaining about it.
They were listening.
TLDR, to my understanding, the TLDR was that point when Steve came in and slapped the iPad down on the table and said, why can't the Mac do this? It set this series of dominoes down that was why don't we make the Mac more mainstream, friendly, so that, and they sold the Mac that we hate. I don't hate it as much as some people, but that Mac sold so much. There was just such a market for what I'm going to call faux. I don't want to call it faux pros. That's mean, but people who self-identified as a pro but didn't have the same needs as a traditional pro. And that was a huge battle because the Mac department is filled with people like us, traditional Mac people, who were not happy about it. And over recent years, they've now taken those reins back. And you can see it obviously in the product line.
Yeah, the thing that bummed me out the most about that MacBook was simply that they didn't make it all that much thinner. They sacrificed so much all in the name of style, and they didn't really seem to think any of these decisions through. And that's I will keep saying it, that the first time that I used a Mac with a touch bar and I had to take my hands off the keyboard and almost say out loud to myself, it really thinks I'm going to take my hands off the keyboard to autocomplete the word there. I'm going to. That's what these engineers thought I would be using this touch bar for. Yeah,
my biggest problem was it was just the constantly hitting the
microdosing. It's a hell of a drug.
But they didn't even update it, right? They announced it in 2016, and they did nothing to it since then. And I never want to be more invested in a product than the company that makes it. They didn't add haptics. They didn't add anything. It was they announced it and they left it, and that's not a good sign.
They didn't add the most important feature that they could have added to it, which is turn this darn thing off, so I don't keep on accidentally hitting it with my hands. Like there was no button that just said turn it all off. Just make it black. Like that's what I
just put
needed.
Doom on it and it was fine. Kidding.
Oh, there you go.
I'm looking for, actually, I can't wait to see what they do with the MacBook Airs, because there will be a beautiful, elegant choice in a couple of months, I think, that will have
like
the M1.
iBook.
And it should be gorgeous. And that's going to be
M2 maybe.
Yeah, I might have to get another.
If they make... If they take an iPad Pro with a smart keyboard and basically said, let's make the MacBook Air exactly like this, except for instead of being some sort of a laminated plastic cover, it will be all aluminum. Oh my goodness, it would be so hard for me not to just simply say, I want this. I have the money for this, so I'm going to own this. Shut up, Andy. Shut up, dad voice. We're owning this.
I'm just saying, I couldn't be happier with that 14-inch M1 Pro. That thing,
if I was Apple, like there's the Schiller doctrine. Everyone knows the Tim Cook doctrine, but the Schiller doctrine was always that every product should be pushing so hard on top of at the product on top of it that it forces that product to reevaluate its need to exist, like gladiatorial combat. And then those products need to reinvent new ways to stay important and push back on the upcoming products. And I would just love if Apple's mentality was all those people on Twitter who keep asking for Mac OS on the iPad, we're going to make Macs so good that nobody who wants Mac OS would ever want to buy anything but a Mac. Like if they could make that their mission statement, I'd be super happy.
Yeah. And there is somebody in the chat room who says, how can you ignore the fact that Intel just announced at CES 60 new CPU models that are faster than the M1?
Faster is easy. Like the key to beating any Apple silicon is just add voltage, because Apple's never going to add voltage. They will reduce voltage to increase battery life. So if you tweak voltage, you will beat Apple on any benchmark ever. But it's like it's benchmark LARP at that point.
Says,
like it's not
professional power users don't use laptops, which is a little bizarre.
Okay.
And he also says programmers could get by on an Atom processor. So he's obviously
it's always been easy to beat. It's always been easy to beat Apple.
And I think, great. I'm glad Alder Lake is fast and hot. And you know what? If you want a laptop that is fast and hot and has no battery life, you can get a faster laptop.
Great for Canadian winter. Leo, I miss it right now. I miss my Intel Mac.
Okay, well, that's not necessarily fair. I mean, I like what they're doing with the Evo platform. I think that what they could come up with, what ASUS and the rest could be shipping by the end of the year could be really, really very interesting. I think they made the line of chips, the really broad line of chips that they need to make to serve all of their customers. Yeah. The problem is that they can't show off this one commercial laptop with a ship date and a price to it that shows off everything that this platform can possibly do. They have to do a reference platform and then bring other people onto the stage to shoot. Here are people who are interpreting, who are showing what can be done with this new platform. Here's what we're doing with our new class of GPUs that you can actually buy, unlike buy at list price when we actually ship them.
Do you think Apple is tempted, because they're going to do faster desktops this spring, we think, or by June anyway, at WWDC. Do you think they're tempted to say, well, let's not worry about the power profile on a desktop and really show them what we could do if we don't mind using, 100 watts?
Well, they can't.
I wouldn't be surprised if they don't.
It would take
stack them.
Even like a quad die M1 Max will have roughly the same power profile as a Alder Lake running at higher frequency, and I think you could fit 6 like in a overclocked Alder Lake power profile. Like it would be really hard to go any hotter than Alder Lake does.
But I'm just saying, if they wanted to make a desktop,
I wouldn't be surprised if
that would be the fastest desktop out there that Intel could just, even with a Xeon, couldn't compete with.
They're going to just make it smaller, Leo. You know that. Like
they're not going to do that.
Apple's always going to make it smaller.
It's not really their goal, is it? Now, for you,
Alex,
they're
going to make a G4 Cube.
For you, Alex, a Mac Pro. I mean, I don't know if you even need that much performance, but.
Yeah, I mean, for some of the stuff we're doing, especially when you start talking about photogrammetry, I mean, and we've talked about it in the past, that I have anytime someone says they've got this great computer. Send me that,
because I want to try it on this M1 Pro and just to see, because it's not supposed to be the fastest by any means. I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I'll send it to you.
What's the timing? Give me some idea of what the timing I should be looking at. Is it 4 days?
My iMac this is an older iMac that I first started testing it on, will go for 3 days before it crashes.
Okay.
Like it just doesn't actually. And yeah, it's like, and I haven't seen anybody, even on a Mac Pro, I haven't seen anybody do it faster than I think the Mac Pro even doesn't always make it to the other end. It's only if you turn all the dials all the way up. This is like
is it a memory issue? I mean, if it is, I only have 16 gigs.
We think it's a heat issue. Well, it's memory. You may have trouble with 16 gigs to manage it, but we think it's a heat issue. Is that literally the chip can't maintain maximum throughput, for 3 days, and then it just goes, oh, I can't do this anymore. And so I give up. So and you should. I mean, you saw when I sent it to Justine, and she put it on the Mac Pro, and she had like literally the Mac Pro was stacked all the way. It was maxed all the way out, and that has also to do with the fact that Metashape utilizes the hardware of the computer really well,
as they should.
So they stack it up, and so it's a pretty. But I'll send you a link. You can play with it.
I don't know if I really want to give up my computer for 4 days and then have it crash.
You can run it overnight and see how far it gets.
Yeah, actually, that's good. That's good. Yeah. But undoubtedly there'll be a Mac Pro, and Apple will. I think Apple will still want the thermal envelope to be low, and will want to keep it low.
I don't know. I mean, I think that Mac Pro, I could imagine them really turning, just not only putting it on a die, but having multiple, chips or something.
Yeah, 8 cores.
Yeah, multi-core, and so I think that you could theoretically do a lot on a Mac Pro where you go, we don't care. Like if someone wants to spend $60,000 with us, they can spend $60,000, and we're going to give them a computer that just screams.
It strikes me though that one of the things Apple has done, which is really interesting, is instead of saying let's have the general purpose architecture be as fast as possible, they have the ProRes playback chip. If you offload the things that are the most burdensome to dedicated silicon,
right.
Then it's not. Then you kind of have this.
I mean,
nice
the ProRes, that chip is unbelievable. It's still the thing that keeps me. I haven't bought the laptop yet, but I still want to just because of that ProRes chip. Yeah. Being able to export. I was exporting stuff in ProRes the other last night, and it was taking. I was like, if it really was 10 times faster, this would have not been so painful.
And it also doesn't hit your CPU. You can keep working while it's rendering.
Right.
No impact. Right. It's amazing.
You could be on Twitter and
Photoshop. I'm doing Photoshop now. Like I could barely surf the web on my Intel when I was rendering ProRes. Now I'm doing Photoshop thumbnails while I'm rendering.
Right.
So my son, as you know, does a lot of TikTok. Certainly would benefit from an M1 Max. Should I wait for the desktops though? Should I say, Henry, I don't want to get you a laptop. I want to get you the Mini instead.
Does he have a preference?
What does he think?
I think he probably wants portable because he wants. He was just down in LA doing a collab.
Yeah, I would
sandwich guy and stuff. So maybe
I'd probably get the laptop. Yeah,
it's fast enough.
Yeah, it's more, and it's way more versatile. But I'm with you. I cannot wait for Apple.
I want to get a Mini for sure.
Once they dispose themselves of the idea of here's how sleek and colorful and how long it has to work on battery and how cool that it has to run, I want them to just get rid of all that and simply say, here is a boring aluminum box that we're going to fill with as much power as we can possibly put into this thing, so that stuff that you didn't even want to experiment with, like as Renee says, I'm rendering something, but it doesn't mean that I have to walk away from this computer. I still have 3/4 of a really, really powerful computer left to play with. That's the sort of stuff that I've got $2,000 in my pocket for.
Yeah. Do you think what are we going to see with the Mac Mini? Let's get some speculation here.
The M1 Pro and the M1 Max versions, I think.
Yeah, with 64 gigs of RAM.
Yeah. Basically replace the Intel space gray Mac Mini we have right now.
And a lot of connectivity.
A lot of ports.
Yeah.
Four screens.
4 screens.
And it turns out not having an HDMI 2.1 doesn't matter because it doesn't mean anything anymore.
Yeah.
Those numbers are totally randomly generated.
Isn't that hysterical? That's really scary.
No, it breaks my heart, Leo.
You're talking about what the HDMI folks, the certification group, just told us that
they made everything optional.
Everything's 2.0 now.
Yeah, it's all optional. Yes. Any features you want to add doesn't matter.
What the
standards?
hell?
It's because the standards were going too slow.
And we thought USB-C was confusing. Oh my God!
Yeah, they solved it by making you never know what you need to do anything anymore because all the boxes say the same, and you got to read a manual to figure out what they actually do.
Yeah, I mean, some of this is also I think that some of this is a fight over who should control color to the that's the big thing, being able to who's going to control the color to the TV. Specifically, going down to SDR. I mean, that's the 2.1A. it has a lot of stuff around, because there's a growing number of people that would really prefer to have a TV that doesn't do anything other than what it's told. Like that there's that they don't want any features. They don't want it to have any standard versus game mode. They want it to be, a native 120 frame per second, Dolby Vision capable window. And that means it can still do 24 frames a second. It can do 30. It can do 60. It can do 120. It does it Dolby Vision. I don't need any menus. Just turn it on and it just does the thing. And that's what. And so to do that though, you have to be able to push 2.1a. You can't do it with the current standard. But if you can find it.
But now you don't even know.
That feature doesn't exist for 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's still 2 or 3 years out.
Okay. I just, I really loved the idea. One of the things I thought was so cool about the Apple Watch was that I can order.
Strap is fire, Leo. Strap is amazing.
Do you like my strap? Isn't that beautiful?
Yes.
It's made out of
almost the same one.
It's made out of old baseball gloves. This is not the Hermes.
It's old baseball glove.
It's old baseball.
But that's
glove.
even cooler.
Yeah, or something.
They call it Shoeless Joe. Shoeless Joe.
Shoeless Joe. It was a silly thing to buy, but I treated myself.
Leo.
This is it
awesome.
Hey, nothing silly if you like it, Leo.
No, this is the pad. I think is it Pad and Quill? Is that the one you have?
Yeah,
Renee?
they're amazing.
Yeah,
mine is the original Apple one, but I love the Pad and Quill stuff.
Yeah, so Pad and Quill. I don't know if they probably still don't. They probably don't offer it still. But they said we found some old leather. That was like 100-year-old leather. That's really soft.
That's amazing.
And really nice.
Yeah.
So we're going to make a limited number of Apple Watch bands out of this leather. And I don't know if
you
they
feel like Indiana Jones.
It's
because it patina's so nicely.
It's like an old baseball glove. When I was a kid, I don't think kids do this anymore. You'd get your baseball glove and you coat it with neat's foot oil. You'd put a baseball in it and you tape it closed and you'd let it sit for 2 weeks so that it would develop a pocket. Now they all come with pockets. I don't know what you do.
Andy and I do it.
No, you still have to do it.
Today.
You still have to do it to get it.
You still have to do it to get a good pocket?
Oh, yeah.
Good.
I just did one, yeah.
Did you really? Oh, that makes me happy.
For my own, yeah.
Baseball is always going to live in the past. I think that's just the nature of the game. But so I think they didn't say where the leather came from, but they said we found a cache of old leather, and our artisans. They even have the name of the guy who made it is stamped on the band, and it was expensive. It was like a couple $100 instead of 80 or whatever. But and it's nice, and it's what I don't like about leather bands is they're stiff. And this one's so soft. Okay, how did I get into that? I can't remember. Oh, I was going to talk about my my watch app. One of the things I really like. Thank you, Renee. You young people, your brains work so well.
Oh, no, I distracted you, so I just got to the mental bookmark of where I was distracting you.
I used to love it that I could call an Uber on my watch. But go ahead, launch your Uber app now. It says, and this is a direct quote: "Please switch to the Uber mobile app. We no longer supporting the Apple Watch app." We no longer supporting the Apple Watch
They
app.
really? Is that what they did?
Yeah. Apparently they got somebody in Eastern Europe to write the message.
They were like, oh, just write something. We just don't want to do this anymore.
They notify me 8 times a day. If I even accidentally open the Uber app, it comes back and says, were you trying to order an Uber? And they vomit notifications on me, but they won't be bothered to put it on the Apple Watch. So,
yeah, for some reason, I understand why you don't have Twitter on an Apple Watch. I can live with that. There's a lot of apps that don't really make sense on the watch. Uber is not one of them. Uber is the perfect. Otherwise, you got to keep your phone out. Uber would tell you it was en route. It would tell you who your driver was, what kind of car he was driving on the watch. In fact, there's what's his name showing it off.
Kevin
Lynch, watch guy.
He was ordering an Apple car. We didn't know.
So now Kevin Lynch is running Apple Car, and Uber is off the watch.
Do we use any? Does anyone use? I mean,
Lyft.
I have to admit, I just don't.
You don't go anywhere.
I don't go anywhere. But what I mean by that is I don't use very many apps on the watch.
The only one I use is Activity, but that's, I don't think that counts, right? That's just part of it.
I use the
app on the phone, but the notifications on the watch.
So on my watch face complication, I have the Activity because I work out and I want to get credit. In fact, if I forget and don't do that, I feel terrible like I didn't work out.
What's your workout now, Leo? I'm going to distract you again.
You're terrible, Renee.
Squirrel.
I'm so interested.
I have a trainer I go to on Monday and Friday. Will, he works me out. He's got he used to work at the gym. I used to go to him at the gym. We don't go to the gym anymore.
Yes.
He's built out his barn with all his equipment. It's awesome. It's called Red Barn, and it's great. So I go there on Monday and Friday, and on Wednesday they have a boot camp where I go, and Jeremiah beats the hell out of us.
That's awesome.
It's great. 3 days a week. You know, that's good, right?
Yeah, I'm asking because all our stuff closed down now too. So I'm looking at all. I'm trying everything.
So this is a personal. Down, yeah. This guy's personal. Now I have to say, I found out later that 2 of the people in the boot camp were anti-vaxxers, and I stopped going.
Oh God.
And then both of them got sick and disappeared. So I shouldn't laugh. That's terrible. They're fine. They didn't die, but they did get sick, and so now I can go again because everybody there is safe.
In Quebec, they made it like you have to be vaxxed in order to get alcohol or pot. And we already had high rates, but now it's like 4 times as many people suddenly showed up to get vaxxed. It's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I like it. That's a good
idea. Renee, just in case you're wondering, the jiu-jitsu is opened in Nevada.
Oh,
okay.
Do you do the Brazilian?
It keeps trying to open here, but
I'm always amazed. My son doesn't. I don't do it. I have a shoulder injury, but my son does jiu-jitsu, cool. And I'm always amazed. But when you watch it, I'm like, I can't believe this is not like a super spreader every 10 seconds. Like, there's.
Yeah, they're all closed here.
Yeah, it's busy here.
Mm. Yeah.
Did you see, Renee, and as long as we're really, as long as we're going down that rabbit hole, did you see that Anthony Bourdain was posting on Reddit about his experiences in Brazilian jiu-jitsu? It was incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Rolling Stone called it the lost diary of Anthony Bourdain because he was posting anonymously. But you know what? If you read it, it's so Anthony Bourdain. The writing
It's his voice.
It's totally his voice. Now, this was many years ago. Of course, he's passed since. But I was wondering, when I read it, I thought, I bet, because I know you're a aficionado. Yeah. Although you're doing something new, aren't you?
I just haven't been able to do jiu-jitsu for a long time because it's been closed for 30 years.
No, he loved his Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He loved it.
I still have my wooden dummy from Wing Chun, so I set that up again, and now I'm beating the crap out of the wooden dummy every day.
I almost made Renee pass out because he taught me a headlock, but he didn't teach me that tapping out meant let go.
Both you and Mike Hurley have choked me out. It's amazing.
I'm so sorry.
Podcasters who can say that.
So sorry. Because first of all, I would have never been able to get him in the headlock if he hadn't fully cooperated. So
fond memories.
Those were the days. That was on our New Year's Eve party. And then finally, to go full circle, I'm at Pat and Quill's site. They do not sell that. Well, maybe they do. They have an aged Lowry cuff. No, I don't think that's the same.
That's nice.
This isn't the same one I got. I don't think that was a limited supply because the
cuffs are all nice though.
I really like this, but I have other leather bands that are too stiff. The fact that this was in somebody's closet for 100 years really made the difference on this. It's so nice.
But what kind of wrists do you have? I have hairy wrists, and there are a lot of bands that I absolutely cannot wear because I just get skinned.
I don't think in any sense I will be as hairy as Andy and Notco. So
he's basically Wolverine.
They're not hairless.
Well, I am. I am genetically optimized for winter warfare. That's why.
And it doesn't bother. But I have
long Russian winters,
fine hair. So maybe
you're cold, and we must work harder to survive.
In any event,
there is no land beyond the Volga.
Fortunately, I have a very efficient stack, and I'm going to pop Uber back off the stack and move on to the next story.
Yes,
but just before we tie that up,
push it back on the stack. Go ahead. Yes.
No. Just I love the way that. Apple is one of the most advanced companies, most thoughtful companies in the world. They move so carefully and so cautiously, and even they will never know how people are going to use a new product until they see how they use them. Everyone thought that, there's going to be this new computing platform that's going to be not necessarily as powerful or as interactive as a phone, but we will be running apps on that device, and we'll be using the phone to project live user interface interactions between the phone and the device. And it's like, no, please give us more fitness features. Give us notifications. Let us be able to push a button to respond to something on a notification. But really, we don't want an app on our watches. We want Mickey Mouse. We want Pixar characters. We want to be able to position a motion picture behind the time, so it looks like the time is actually the sunglasses that my daughter is wearing. it's like this is why AR and VR is going to be so interesting. Where I'm sure that everyone who's trying to make a play for this understands that. Look, we're gonna make hardware. We're going to make an API. We're going to do a wonderful demo. It's going to be great. The demo, it's going to be great. But then a year from the launch, that's when we'll know what kind of product we have, because the users will tell us.
One of my favorite memories from an Apple event, I think it was 2015. I was standing next to someone really famous, but who will remain nameless. And Johnny Ive walked over to us, and the person said, "That was a terrific show, Johnny." And Johnny just looked and he goes, "Was it? Was it? I mean, we create these products, but we never know what they really mean until they get into the hands of our customers. Only when we see how people use them will we truly understand them." And the person next to me said, "Oh, okay, thank you, Johnny." And Johnny just nodded and walked off. I've always remembered that.
Was it? It is the 50. We didn't really mention this, but January 9th, 2007 was the day Steve Jobs announced the iPhone. So it is, in fact, the 15th anniversary of the iPhone announcement, not shipping, but of the iPhone announcement.
And of course, it wasn't going to work because it's a really
well, in fact, on that day, it really didn't work, but they were able to get it to work.
But I mean, I just remember all the rumors, and people were just like, "This is never going to happen." I mean, have they ever heard of a BlackBerry? I mean, I don't think this is.
I was listening to
I
MacBreak,
said this.
Was it Scott who said he was going to smash his Trio the same day? And
Scott was all in. He said
Scott and I are both all in.
Yeah,
like,
he was all in. Scott Bourne definitely. Yeah. In fact, there's a picture of him from the San Francisco Chronicle holding his first iPhone aloft as he exited the store in triumph.
That was a great show.
He wanted to make an iPhone vest. I think maybe Merlin Mann suggested that, a bandolero. But I was a little more skeptical. I was among the people who said, this is a tough market, the cell phone market. Really, do you think Apple can do well?
And remember,
1%, the only example that we had before that was the horrible iRock. Rocker that they made with Motorola. And I thought, well, I hope it's better than that.
And Steve said we want 1%. We'll be really happy with 1%.
So they got 50. Yeah, that's all right. That's pretty good.
Also, we have patented this up and down and top to bottom. There will never be anyone making another phone that's even similar to this. Yeah.
You know what would be cool? If he had known that almost to the day, 15 years later, BlackBerry would flip the switch on its servers, January 4th, 2022, and shut them down for the last time, making all BlackBerry devices obsolete. That took 15 years, but that's a victory, I guess. Yeah.
But what's amazing is also that there was almost, within a couple of years, there was almost no phone that looked anything different than
right.
You know, it was just that it worked through it. And I don't think that anyone would have predicted the best thing that ever happened to Apple was Android. Like I'll flat out say, because Apple would have been, you know, the antitrust stuff would have wrapped. Yeah, it would have been a huge issue. 10 years ago.
Well, in fact, quite famously, Google engineers were watching the event January 9th. They had a phone they were ready to ship, and they said, no, back to the drawing pad.
Yeah.
We're going to start over, because that's what phones should look like going forward is glass slabs.
Phone movie, and also, to be fair, this is a lot like the GUI, mouse and pointer interfaces, where it's something that had been considered for a long time. A lot of the basic hardware they'd been working on for a long time. Apple just had a huge jump on actually making it useful and practical. So it's not as though this was being parachuted in from another planet, but nonetheless. And also the other thing that oftentimes gets missed in the conversation is, as innovative as this hardware was, the forethought that they had in understanding that, look, there are two large phone companies in the United States, AT&T and Verizon. AT&T is getting their lunch stolen by Verizon. They are desperate, and they will agree to pretty much everything that we ask of a carrier if we make the iPhone exclusive to this sort of underdog carrier at this time. And so much of what the iPhone was capable of was impossible on BlackBerries, on Windows mobile phones, all these sort of stuff, because they simply would not allow a phone to have a real web browser, because they didn't think that their networks could handle it. They simply would not allow so much of what they would not allow the device manufacturer to dictate to the carrier, here is the device that we will make and sell you, not tell us what device you think that you want to market and we will make this thing and put up and slap your logo on it. There's so much innovation that goes not only from top to bottom, but side to side.
Yeah, and the fact that Apple, with no market leverage, held out for total control or near total control was a big deal. Like as you said, like they didn't have there's no reason for anybody to make a deal with them, really. And
singular at the time.
Yeah. Well, no, they were AT&T, then they became Singular, and then that worked great, so they became AT&T.
And Verizon
again.
said no. Yeah. And then Singular was desperate enough to let them do it. And Scott Forstall did an amazing interview with the Computer History Museum where he's like, AT&T is Singular's on the phone saying, what does it look like? And he's like, I can't tell you. And he's like, is it a Lego phone? And they're like just yelling at him.
Yeah. Amazing thing.
15 years later, it's completely dominant. Although, as you point out, Alex, you're right. In fact, Android is a little bit ahead right now.
Well, globally, Android's way ahead. Like, it's so, in the United States, it's right at about 50-50, depending on who you talk to.
I think that's also price. That's a price issue because, half the market is not going to spend $1,000 on a phone. So there are a lot of cheap Android phones.
Some markets are very spec.
My daughter uses Android because she needs a new phone every 3 months because they break. So I'm not going to, we're not going to go for the iPhone on this. It's just too expensive.
Yeah,
the phones break or does she break them?
Well, you'll have to ask her. It's her opinion they leap from her hand in an attempt to escape. But it's fun. I mean, I've tried every case under the sun. We've tried everything. But you know what? Those Motorola, the Motorola G9 Power, they're $200. They're actually very good Android phones. Over a year, it cost me less than one iPhone. So
you have a drawer of them, don't you? Like one of them breaks, and you just say, "I'll fix it for you," and you just quietly hand over a new one.
I have quite a large drawer of broken phones of all kinds. It's interesting. I haven't broken a phone in a long time.
I have this. I have this case, and I drop it all the time, and I haven't. I don't. And I put a screen protector.
Stark Industries. Look at it.
This is made by Smart-ish.
Oh,
but it holds my credit cards and stuff on the back.
Yeah.
And then that's it. I mean, that's the big thing is it has to hold the credit cards
but then you can't do wireless charging.
I don't do that.
Yeah.
I don't even like my watch doing wireless charging. I put up with it, but it always slides off. It gets bumped and now it's not charging anymore. So I dropped this thing. I mean, then I put a screen protector on immediately. So as soon as I buy a new phone, I get a screen protector for the front. And then I get the case.
Do you get the glass protectors? Is that what you use?
Yeah. They come in pairs or whatever. And the videos. What's great is they've really gotten good at it. They have a little
machine kind of a.
Well, no. I do it at home. But it's got a great little template that tells you where to go. They've really figured it out. And so it's really easy.
With glass, you don't get the air bubbles underneath. That's the problem with plastic. You don't get.
You don't get the air bubbles, but also it really shows you how to do it. There's a way to use the squeegee and the thing and the thing and the thing. I mean, it's like I used to be scared of it. Now I add things to some of my devices all the time.
Like I said, I don't break my phone, so I guess I don't need it. But I kind of have I certainly have an aversion to plastic screen protectors. But the glass seems like, and everything works the same. It's all.
Yeah, it works perfectly. What's funny is that it was really hard for me to get over because I used to, every time I bought an iPhone, I would go to the Apple store and they have this like beast of a applicator. Like it's like this thing that goes around the phone and chunk. And it's perfect. And so I would always have them do it because they'll do it for free if you buy it. If you buy it there, they'll just put it on for you. And so I would always have it done because I was like, I don't want to figure it out. Once I figured it out, I'm like, all my phones have something on it. My old iPad has a paper surface. I think I recommended that before. And because I like drawing on it. And so you just start adding them because all it is, the instructions got better. Like literally that was it. Yeah. The instructions have gotten way better at how to do it. They have a little QR code and you hit it and then you hit the QR code, it takes you to a YouTube page and it shows you the video of how to get it done. And then you do it.
But I can't see any reason to do it. It's just to prevent breakage and scratching.
Mine doesn't scratch or break and it carries my credit cards.
And the credit cards.
I've always put my phones in cases. The last phone I broke was an iPhone 5, but no worries, it belonged to Apple. But I've never put a screen protector on.
It's not wasn't mine.
I did. No, in my defense, I did say sorry when I.
How many phones do you think Apple loans out that come back broken or cracked? I bet a lot.
No comment.
Not that they've ever been used harder because they don't.
Right.
They're not owned.
Yeah.
Well, I don't do drop tests. I don't believe that is within my area of that's something that they've agreed to let me do. But yeah, I don't know. Now that I remember, I remember exactly what the situation was. It was I wasn't used to like that super shiny, super slippery glass back. I was at JP Licks, an ice cream place in Jamaica Plain, and they have those polished marble like tables, and so I just simply placed it on I dropped it maybe a quarter of an inch, like 1 inch, and the thing just kept sliding, went all the way off the edge of the table. And I'm like, that has got to be the most air hockeyest phone I've ever had in my life.
They really are. People are complaining about the Pixel 6. I immediately put a case on it, but people are complaining. It is the slippery.
I had a case before I had
the Nexus 4.
Yeah. Just like it's like a bar of soap. It just goes squirts out.
And
of
Nexus
your hand.
4 can still beat it off a flat surface. If you do a time trial.
Yeah, because of the camera bump. It slows it down
fast.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean, even for some of my test phones, these are older ones that I always put even just this little rubbery one on it. And
that's what I always do. Yeah,
this is what happens. Actually, this is what happens if I don't get it on fast enough. Is that I do?
Oh my God! Don't waste any time. Get it on.
I mean, literally, it was like
glass.
I had it for like 2 days, and it was. So I put them on pretty quickly. These are some of my R&D phones.
Apple Silicone Red, but the colors aren't very good. But
nice, like clear.
Yeah, I like clear too. But this is nice. It's grippy, and it's easy to spot across the room. So.
Yeah, I do too much photography not to have like a really grippy case.
That's nice. Look at that.
And then I have to always I want really super wonderful colorful cases, but every time like I choose something like that, like I'll have a hot pink case, and then like I'll be doing a selfie and there's this like pink slab of something like in the reflection of someplace. That's like, dang, I better
what
go
case
back
is
to
that?
basic
I know this is an Apple show and that's a Pixel 6 Pro, but just out of curiosity.
It is the Spigen SPIGEN case.
Yeah.
It has just a little tiny kickstand, which is all I really want. There are a couple other styles I really like. I think the in case, I think that it's the kind that has these really thick rubbery like textured side grips, which is again the number of times when I'm sort of like trying to position something really weird, and I'm realizing that, or I'm holding it like this, like with 2 fingers like that, and I'm like, oh, this is bad, this is not a loaner phone, Andy, this is not a loaner phone, Andy.
Don't drop it.
We really want that extra grip.
That's how I felt when I first got the Samsung Galaxy Fold.
Yeah,
$2,500 phone, and I'm taking pictures with it. And I'm thinking, and I didn't have a case yet. If I drop this, I'm going to die. This is the case: the Spigen Tough Armor Extreme Protection. Does it work with wireless charging?
Yep.
Okay.
But it's not the one that works with MagSafe. There is a model that someone has made.
I don't need that.
That is MagSafe compatible, but no.
I might get pink. It's funny how cheap these are. This is a really good example. So never buy an Apple Watch band. Never buy an Apple case. The Apple cases are 3 times as much as this case.
Yeah. Well, it's sometimes you need to be cautious. The one thing that I'm looking for is that it has to be just absolutely snug. Like I've dipped this in like liquid vinyl or something like this. Nothing annoys me more than like a silicone case
rattles around.
That's just a little bit. Yeah. And it's like, I feel if it's not difficult to remove, so difficult that I'm not apt to even try to remove it, I'm not interested.
Yeah. We should just edit that out because this is a MacBreak Weekly. But okay, I'm just going to mention that. Let's see. All right. As long as we're on tangential, did you love Alex? I wanted to get your opinion on this. Netflix published for their partners, people making movies for Netflix, their camera guide. Did you see that, Alex?
Yeah, that's been around for a long time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just finally saw it. Yeah,
it's incredible. Like it's not just the camera guides. So Netflix has this what's on their webpage. I think is a pretty basic.
Like Blackmagic, they only recommend the Ursa Mini or Mini Pro.
The Ursas, yeah.
My Canon is safe though.
Your Canon, let's see, is your Canon in the list? The C300?
I believe so. 500
or 500. Yeah.
500,
300, 500, 700. You could even a C70. You could make a movie for Netflix.
Yep. Doing it now.
there's a whole section here that's imaging, but if you look at sound delivery,
they got everything.
There's a lot of things, and it's great because Netflix, arguably, I mean, I had a friend that was the producer. He was a producer, and he said he's one of 900 producers that were working on shows, and he said, and they're 900 short. Like this was, and this
they
was
need
years
more.
Ago. They're just like this giant machine of building. So that what the big thing is that they know, the big thing they know how to do this. Like they know how to get the content out to the other end. And so they put out all these practices. It saves them a lot of time. And if you start, like, even if you hope to do it at some point, then you should be looking at this. But if you're content creating, it's worth reading no matter what, because it's really well done.
Yeah.
Some of the guys on the team I've worked with in the past.
Do you agree with the camera recommendations? Or all those?
Yeah, those are great cameras.
It seems like there's other stuff that's left out.
I think that the 6K that Blackmagic makes, I don't think the image is any worse than the Ursas, but the Ursas give you more stuff, right. So that maybe that makes sense. But the image quality, I think, on the 6K is
and they don't need more than
with the G2
4.6K, obviously, because
mostly just Cinecams, isn't it? They just, as long as you're a fairly good Cinecam, you're on that list, because it doesn't seem like they have any of the prosumer mirrorless.
Yeah, I think that was. I mean, I think most of the prosumer stuff doesn't record RAW, so most of the prosumer stuff is some weird H264, H265, and so and without that, you don't have enough bit depth to get, and you don't have enough bit depth, and you don't have enough resolution. There's a whole bunch of things that you don't have to get, because it's not what you can shoot, it's what you can grade. So you have to be able to grade the image, so color, have the color depth. So you need X number of stops within the color data that's coming in, because when you're shooting a show, it's not WYSIWYG. It's not like, oh, I see it. It's going to go, and that's why log is so important. But that log is of a limited value if that log is in 8-bit or if it's in a lower bit rate. So you can, because it means that, okay, now I'm going to take this low contrast image and make it higher contrast. And the problem that I have there is I'm going to start stretching all those colors out. Well, if I don't have the bit depth, if I'm not at 10-bit or 12-bit, if I don't have that data there to grab onto, or the bit rate to hang on to all the details. Like you take an iPhone out, and sure, you can shoot 4K HDR, except if you shoot trees, it looks like swirly things. And if you shoot with a real camera, it looks real.
This just turned into Office Hours Mini.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. But I have one more question for you.
You asked.
This Friday, Apple TV Plus, Macbeth, Joel Coen's Macbeth.
Oh my gosh.
With Denzel Washington, Frances McDormand.
Can't wait to see this.
First of all, it's 4:3, which is really interesting.
Weird.
Black and white, high contrast. What do you think is this on an Arri maybe, or? Yeah. It's like, yes, for sure, right?
I mean, not all, but the vast majority of high-end films. Now, it could have been shot on film too. I mean, I don't know.
No, it's digital. You can, if you look at it, it's digital for sure.
Yeah, but my Arri kind of owns the.
Well, Roma.
Maybe red.
Roma was shot on an Alexa.
Almost everything. It's like 80%. 80% of the major feature films.
Cuarón's Academy Award winner from a couple of years back.
It's the knees, the knees in the area, the color management.
Something about it.
It's got the soft knee on the highlights and the shadows that just is a really pleasing.
It's beautiful black and white.
And so
now, why
really well.
does it do 4:3? Why 4:3?
They probably cropped it that way. Yeah, but the
unless it was Zack Snyder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and a lot of times you get that great. The best black and white isn't just converting it to black and white, like, because that would just be grabbing the luminance or whatever. Usually, that's a creative combination of the color channels to affect the black and white. In fact, you can do that in Photoshop, and you can get a much higher quality black and white rendition by taking all the color channels and then combining them as part of the grade.
I can't wait to see it. That's come out.
It looks really good. Beyond that, it just looks like a great version of the thing.
Denzel Washington and Frances McDormand.
Frances McDormand, yeah.
I mean,
Cohen
done.
Any of the Coens,
done.
yeah.
Joel Coen. I think that it was just like Joel. This is one of those, because a whole bunch of the streaming companies, Apple included, I've heard these stories that they basically go to folks that they want to include, and they say, what's that dream project that no one will fund? We'll fund it. Yeah. Like that's how like first they killed my father by Angelina Jolie. they said, what we'll give you a budget, $25 million to make anything you want. And she said, well, I want to make something in the Khmer language. Like I was like, I'm going to go down the whole way down and do this really pure. And they were like, okay. And it was good. It's good. So it's allowing the actors and the directors to do whatever they want. So I think that Apple just said, we'll pay for whatever you want to do. Although it's because it's A24, it may have already been done.
I have this in my mind, complete another fantasy. I don't know, but they're married, Frances McDormand and Joel Cohen, and I have the fantasy that one night he looked over and said, "Hey, Frances, if you could do anything, what would you want to do?" She said, "I always want to play Lady Macbeth." He says, "Done."
Yeah, exactly. Apple called me and said that I could do whatever I want. What do you want to do, honey? And she was like, "I want to play."
And then he says, "Okay, Frances, and who do you think Macbeth? Who do you think?"
I want to do it with Denzel.
Denzel, obviously, right? Yeah.
I would not be surprised.
I want to play the shark.
Oh my God, I can't wait to see this.
It looks, and the reviews are incredible.
Oh yeah, it's almost perfect on Rotten Tomatoes. It's going to be
dying to see it. Yeah.
Now, so Retcon 5 has seen it. He saw it in the cinemas last year. Is it, how close to the Shakespeare is it? It says written by Joel Cohen, but I can't imagine, it says written for the screen by Joel Cohen based on the play by William Shakespeare, but then every bit I've seen in the clips have been actual Shakespearean language. So, he says it's the fastest Macbeth ever.
Well, and a lot of times, a lot of Shakespeare gets cut out. Like if you look at like Kenneth Branagh's, and even Laurence Olivier's,
and
their version of Henry V.
Yeah.
But if you take their Henry V, they cut huge chunks.
Yeah. I interviewed Kenneth Branagh when that came out, actually.
Oh, nice.
Because I was very curious. Yeah, and
I watched it in the theater when it came out.
Yeah, me too, because that's all we had.
Yep.
Back in the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Had to watch it in the theater. I'm going to watch this on my 4K OLED screen with HDR.
It's going to look great.
And it's going to be, I've watched the trailer like 10 times. Because that's why I wanted to know about the camera, because it's just, there's something about the richness of that black and white. It just looks so good. So good. Yeah.
Your mind has such a powerful ability to fill in details, and it is more real than any
Macbeth
reality
should be in black and white. Absolutely. You remember in the really old days, because blood on black and white doesn't look like blood, they would wear yellow face paint because it looked more real, and they would use chocolate syrup for blood because you have to think about these things because you're going black and white, right?
One of my favorite pieces of special effects tricks are like from black and white movies where they would do like a transformation where like beautiful woman turns into a witch, or even like a monster transformation where it's like, oh my God, this is 1931, but this is like perfect CGI. And what they did was they had the person painted their face painted with multicolored different makeup, and they simply changed like the colored gels over the lighting so that suddenly the black and white film was registering different highs, different lows, and absolutely changing like from one painted mask to another, so to speak. And it's like, my God, those people were clever in the 30s.
So in this article, they mentioned that the costume designer Mary Zofris was on Roger Deakins and James Deakins' podcast, and she was talking about because Macbeth was shot in black and white. Of course, she wants to do costume test photos in black and white. She said, we used to have to use a Polaroid with black and white stock, but now we just use the iPhone with the noir setting. Another use for the iPhone.
It's everywhere.
The iPhone with the noir setting.
Credits to Color by Deluxe, lenses by Panaflex, and filters by Instagram.
Oh my God! Well, that's good to know, though, because that's good to know. I will be using the noir setting from now on. I just love that look.
Still never gave us Gotham back. Oh, inexcusable.
Inexcusable. Let's see here. Before we take our final break, if there's anything I missed in the rundown that you guys wanted to talk about, Spotify HiFi delayed indefinitely. Company says, we don't know when we're going to do that. You know what? I think they realize
like no one cares.
No, exactly, Alex. Nobody knows. Nobody wants this.
No. Well, we already have enough speakers. Like I was like,
too much trouble.
But to be fair, it's more like delayed indefinitely. That's like air power. That's been delayed indefinitely.
Yeah.
This is like we're still doing it. We just don't know when. They did say by the end of 2021. So yes, I suppose you could say delayed indefinitely. But that just means they're not going to be doing it, I guess.
Well, we'll see. We'll watch.
Yeah, I think that's a we didn't give up, but we're not going to do it.
And this story is for Renee Ritchie. Just for you. The LA police officers who were recorded in 2017 by their digital in-car video system when they decided to go after a Snorlax instead of responding to an armed robbery in progress at a mall are still fired. The California Appeals Court said...
Nice try.
No.
But Renee,
but it was a Snorlax. It was a Snorlax.
Like how rare is the Snorlax? That's what I want to know.
So when I first heard the story, I thought this is ridiculous because who wants a garbage Snorlax? And then I didn't realize it was 2017 where they were like,
it was the really rare. Early days. So this is from the ruling. The hunt for Snorlax allegedly began at 6:09 p.m. Officer Mitchell alerted Lozano that Snorlax this is quotes from the digital recording system in the squad car, just popped up at 46th and Limert. After noting that Limert doesn't go all the way to 46th, Lozano responded, "Oh, you know what I can do? I'll go down 11th and swing up on Crenshaw. I know the way I can get to it." Mitchell suggested a different route, then told Lozano, "We got 4 minutes." Now, Renee, as you know, that means that was a raid, right? That was going to end in 4 minutes.
Well, no, but like back in the day, you also had the tracking apps that would tell you the spawn time for how much longer that
so maybe
Pokemon
it wasn't a raid.
There.
Okay.
And so what I'm guessing is they're like, we have a code 143. 143? Yes, that's the Pokedex entry for a Snorlax. We have a code 143 on the corner of Sunnydale.
We don't have to imagine. We have the recording. For approximately the next 20 minutes, the in-car camera system captured the petitioners discussing Pokémon as they drove to different locations where the virtual creatures apparently appeared on their mobile phones. On their way to the Snorlax location, Officer Mitchell alerted Officer Lozano that a Togetic just popped up on Crenshaw, just south of 50th. After Mitchell apparently caught the Snorlax, exclaiming in true Pokemon fashion, "Got him!" Petitioners agreed to go get the Togetic and drove off. Is it Togetic or Togetic?
Togetic, I think. But what's so like the thing about Pokemon Go that like if you play it for any length of time, what it takes you an inhuman amount of effort to get 1 year will be like things you throw out the next year.
Are garbage Pokemon now. Yeah.
Yeah. My godson was the only one who didn't get the Togetic when it was spawning at Mount Royal this one time, and he was so upset. He was a tiny kid at the time. He had a fit about it. So another one spawned, and I raced with his father to go get it, and we arrived, and I ran, and I finally got it at the last second, and now they're like on every street corner.
But see, you understand then the officer's legitimate concern, even when the radio called in a robbery in progress at the local mall. Well, wait a minute. I'll get... After communications made a second attempt to contact petitioners, Officer Lozano asked, "Should we ask communications if there's a message?" Officer Mitchell replied, "It's up to you, whatever you think. I don't want them to think we're not paying attention to the radio." Lozano responded, "Aw, screw it." And they went after the Snorlax, but it didn't end there. After they got the Togetic, the recording recorded Mitchell saying, "Don't run away, don't run away," while Lozano described how he buried it and ultra-balled the Togetic before announcing, "Got him." Mitchell advised he was still trying to catch it. This is in the court filing, by the way, adding, "Holy crap, man, this thing is fighting the crap out of me." Eventually, Mitchell exclaimed, "Holy crap, finally," apparently in reference to capturing the Togetic. He remarked, "The guys are going to be so jealous."
Why isn't this a TV Plus show?
Petitioners then agreed to return to the 7-Eleven to end their watch. On the way, Mitchell remarked, "I got you a new Pokemon today, dude." When confronted by their sergeant saying, "What the hell?" They claimed they were merely having a conversation about Pokemon Go.
This could be an episode of SWAT. This is amazing.
He said, "We weren't playing a video game. They were charged with 1, failing to respond to a robbery in progress call, 2, making misleading statements to their sergeant when asked why they didn't hear the radio, 3, failing to respond on the radio when the unit was called, 4, failing to handle an assigned radio call, 5, playing Pokemon Go while on patrol.
Yeah. That's number 5. That's the 5th one on the list, man.
I remember like a few years ago, a friend of mine got kicked. She was at the cemetery at night. These cemeteries are always good spawning grounds. And she was taking all the gyms, and the police stopped her. And even though it's a public park, there were still hours that you were allowed to be there. They made her leave, and then she had to watch from outside as they took all the gyms that she just spent half an hour, like in their squad car, driving to the different gyms and taking them. So it's a long-standing thing. It's hilarious.
Yeah, if only we could like gamify law enforcement. I think we would clear the streets of all crime like in 10 seconds. If they could basically, if there's an app that would something like send them to the next place where they could catch like a drug dealer, like ooh, just give them like a vaguely Japanese game and a really cool memoji. Like after their mugshots, they'll turn them into memoji and say, "Ooh, got to catch them all." Yes, please do.
Petitioners admitted leaving their footbeat area in search of Snorlax, but they insisted they did so both as part of an extra patrol and to catch.
It was a dangerous Snorlax.
Mythical creature.
It had an overcoat.
I mean,
they thought that the Snorlax was dealing.
Yeah, exactly. Snorlax.
You know who I really blame? Huggy Bear, because word on the street was that
Huggy Bear.
The big crims were going after the Pokemon.
Is this a Starsky and Hutch reference?
Well, you know that Pikachu is a shot caller, right? Like that's just got to be the shot caller.
There's an awful lot of people watching here. Just like, what are these guys?
Huggy Bear. Oh no, you know what? As Lisa will reassure me at all times, people still play Pokemon Go. Because every time we drive by the Mormon church, or no, I'm sorry, it's not Mormon, it's, well, whatever, the church by our house, she swears, they got the gym again. And she has to put a red guy back in it every time. They got my gym.
Lisa knows how the game is played.
She knows.
The craziest one is still that. It's actually probably when I stopped playing Pokemon was when I was at the Hagia Sophia in Budapest.
Budapest. No, not Budapest. Istanbul.
Not
I always confuse
Istanbul.
Yeah.
And I was in the middle of the night. We were walking past it, and there's a whole bunch of people all hunched over, and they're next to the Hagia Sophia, and they're all hunched over playing Pokemon.
The most beautiful church in the world.
And I was like, and I was just like, really?
Yeah.
And I was like,
I can actually
St. Joseph's in Montreal.
I can actually beat you. I've told this story on other shows, but Lisa and I were in Malta, and we were standing there, as one does, spinning and throwing our Pokeballs, and a bunch of young guys comes up to us. We're getting a little nervous. They don't speak English. Going, come on. And they brought us back to the Malta Cathedral, beautiful cathedral, and they say, raid. It was a beautiful moment of togetherness, cross-cultural togetherness.
There's still no gyms at Apple Park, if I could just put that out there for people who might be thinking about going there and adding some. There's still no gyms.
Telling them that
there's gyms at Infinite Loop, but there's no gyms at Apple Park.
That's interesting.
It's funny.
Let's take a little break on that note. Your picks of the week coming up next, guys. This episode of MacBreak Weekly brought to you by Our Crowd. What a neat idea. Those of us in the tech industry often see deals. Kevin Rose always said, Leo, you should invest. You got deal flow. I don't know. I think I wouldn't know what to do. But if you're an investor and you've done all the, you've put away money for your retirement. I don't want you to bet the rent or anything like that. But if you're an investor looking to get into deal flow of companies not even public yet, companies in the very earliest stages, companies really where the potential for growth is best, you ought to know about Our Crowd. It's a venture capital group that wants to share the wealth with everybody. All around the world, tech companies are innovating and driving returns for investors. Our Crowd analyzes companies across the global private market. They're looking for companies with the greatest growth potential, and then they present them to you as a potential opportunity to invest in areas like personalized medicine, cybersecurity, breakthrough stuff like robotics, quantum computing. All over the world, it's state-of-the-art labs, startup garages, anywhere in between. Our Crowd is identifying innovators so you can invest when the growth potential is greatest early. Now, You should go. It's free to sign up for Our Crowd, by the way. Go to ourcrowd.com/MacBreak. You enter in which country you're in, because every country has different rules about this. In the U.S., they call it an accredited investor. You have to satisfy certain net worth requirements. And it's really to protect people from betting the rent money. This has to be for somebody who has investment money, is looking for a new way to invest. Accredited investors at Our Crowd have already invested over $1 billion in growing tech companies. 21 of Our Crowd's portfolio companies are unicorns worth more than $1 billion. And many of Our Crowd's members have benefited from over 40 IPOs or sale exits of portfolio companies. That's why you want to get in early. You want to get in before the exit, before the rest of the world knows what's going on. You have to be accredited. You can get started for as little as $10,000. That's the minimum required to invest. You can get into a single company deal for that. If you want, Our Crowd also has put together funds. So if you feel more comfortable with a fund, $50,000 is the minimum investment there. But terms will vary, as I said, depending on where you invest. So go to the site, input the country. I'll give you an example of some of the early deals, though. There's one they're working right now that you could invest in right now called Blue Tree, who could revolutionize the $1 billion plus total addressable food tech market. Blue Tree has developed a process to significantly reduce the sugar in any natural liquid, lowering health risks while retaining great taste. It seems like a brilliant idea. Blue Tree has already signed a 5-year, 100 million liter contract with an industry leader. You can get in now early by investing at Our Crowd. But that's just an example. Invest in Blue Tree. Just go to ourcrowd.com/MacBreak. Join for free, ourcrowd.com/MacBreak. You can join the fastest growing venture capital investment community. At least get the information, see what they're looking at. That by itself is fantastic. It's fun. And then maybe you're going to see something and say, you know what? I want to get in on this. And you can. Our Crowd, ourcrowd.com/MacBreak. All right. Now, let's see here. I think it's time for a pick of the week. I'm going to start with you, Renee Ritchie. What's your pick of the week this week?
All right. So this is something I'm really excited about. So Cleo Abram has been working at Vox for years. She's worked on the Vox Explained series for Netflix, worked on a ton of videos for Vox, has a really, really good TikTok account. She is just so immensely talented as a journalist, but she decided to go indie recently because she thought that a lot of journalism these days is kind of a little bit cynical. It's not as optimistic as she would like. And she thinks that we live, much like I do, like we live in an age of wonders, and it's not everything that we have around us now is going to become a change agent for the future. And it's hard to predict which ones will, but she wants to sort of look them out, find them, and do like real, down on the earth journalism about them, so she can sort of watch them as these different things are all attempted. And so she's gone independent now. She started a new YouTube channel, and she's going to be posting regularly, doing a really like deep dive into a lot of the potentially transformative technologies that we're seeing emerge right now. And I just couldn't be more excited because she is so immensely talented, and this will give her the freedom that I think she really needs to not just like whenever you do like for a big media organization, even really good ones like Vox, there's always a lot of limitations on what you can do and a lot of other concerns and competing agendas. And I think this will just let her be her. So I'm really excited about it. She has her first video up already.
She's got a really cute dog too, I might add.
Yeah, I mean, she's just
I love the name of this. Huge asterisk, if true. Cleo Abram, there's her puppy. Oh my goodness, you're a good boy. What a good boy. So the first video, already 70,000 views, why I left Vox. That's it. I'm not familiar with her work, but that's great.
And she got the huge if true from just like you see in part of the video, she shows a bunch of tweets from well-known analysts just flashing by with all these sarcastic replies saying huge if true, huge if true. Yeah, she just merges that into her logo.
Yeah, that's good. I like it. It's a good premise.
Yeah. Optimistic journalism is always going to have a place in my heart.
It's, there was a recent piece from the editor-in-chief at Wired saying, when Wired was started, it was optimistic. It was all about how tech is going to change the world and make a better world. But over time, especially under his leadership, it's gotten more and more negative. Yeah. And he said, we got to recalibrate. We don't want to be pure optimists, but we don't want to be pure pessimists either. So we got to call it as it lays. And when something is exciting and new and transformative, we should say that. It's a challenge we have too. It's easy to get very cynical and negative.
Well, also you see that like in a lot of the critiques now of the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and New York Times, that a lot of it is taking stories that could legitimately go either way, but because people have tested this too, they'll put up a positive version of a story and a negative version of a story, and we'll click on the negative one way more than we'll the positive one. Yeah. And sometimes bottom lines just went out with that, and they notice the trends and they go for it. And you have to make a concerted effort. Like, it takes energy to move things forward in a positive way. And like you said, I don't espouse like whitewashing anything or being overly, but we live in an age of wonders, and it's okay to sort of enjoy those things, like while you're being skeptical, while you're being realistic about it. But we live in an age of wonders, and it's fun to celebrate that too.
Yeah, yeah. Cleo Abram, huge if true. New YouTube channel. Nothing up yet except the preview, but maybe that was time to smash the, what is it?
Smash the like button, hit the subscribe button.
Do all that thing. Do those things as YouTubers talk about. Andy Anako, pick of the week.
Mine is a screensaver, believe it or not, but a really, really cool one.
What?
There's a design. I know they still exist, and for those of you who are using a 24-inch CRT Sony Trinitrons connected to your Macs, you definitely want to prevent burn-in for those phosphors. They're very vulnerable. But this one really got my attention because it reproduces a clock that was produced by a Swedish design company that is so cool. It is a bank of 24 clock faces, just the hour hand and minute hands, and the hands themselves keep revolving to make the shapes of a digital clock. So we'll tell you what time it is, like 12:34, but it'll be these hands from these individual clock faces turning to basically make the shapes of these letters and numbers, and also different styles and different patterns. Now, if I had not gone for the less lucrative but more personally fulfilling field of independent journalism, I might be able to afford the $6,000 limited edition clock that this Swedish design firm created. Fortunately, this developer just posted on GitHub just a few days ago a screensaver version of this, and it shows you exactly how cool these animations are. I've had it running like since Monday, and it's like not only is it just cool to be able to look across the office and see what time it is in a very, very cool way and pretend that I can afford a $6,000 mantle clock, but also it reminded me that screensavers are supposed to be cool and entertaining. Flying toasters made us all happy. Like, why don't we have like really good screensavers anymore? For that matter, why don't we have really good like Apple Music visualizers anymore? Why do we only have like the one thing? Especially for all these different really good screens, all these really good like Apple TV devices we have. So I've had this thing installed. Yes, it only runs for me for about 45 minutes before the system says, oh, by the way, I'm going to go into low power mode now. But for those 45 minutes, it's a pretty good time.
Brad Root, it's open source, written in Swift. In fact, he even says shows you how you can add animations in Swift, if you want to, which is very, very cool. Nice job.
And again, nice. It's a Git, so you can get the Xcode project. You can make modifications. You can see how it works.
Yeah, really cool. In fact, you can help him make the numbers not negative because he was too lazy to go back and make them positive after reworking the animation system, he says. So that would be a good pull request you might want to submit just for that. Mr. Alex Lindsay, I saved the best, well, maybe not the best, but the most expensive for last. What do you got?
Some of it's expensive and some of it's not. So
this one looks expensive.
It can be. So we had a Harrison consoles on this morning, actually, and I didn't really know much about them, to be honest. They've been around for 40 years, but I hadn't really used Harrison consoles. I'd heard about them, but I didn't really know much about it at all. They don't go to a lot of conferences, and I just hadn't seen them. It turns out that about 13 years ago, they pivoted and started, doing virtual, DAWs, digital audio workstations, based
not
using
hardware.
A lot of their
it's
own.
all software.
Well, they make hardware, and so they were they had already moved to software-based mixers, hardware mixers. They had started with analog hardware mixers, then they went to software-based in like 2004, 2005. Then they started doing DAWs. And what happened was at the beginning of COVID, everyone was all of us were trying to figure out, how do I mix audio in the cloud? And so they're all looking around, and the only thing that really was close was their mix bus. This is a mix bus. Now, this is VBM. This is what actually what they ended up with, and they're just releasing in the last couple months. So Mixbus 32 and MixBus itself, those are relatively inexpensive little DAWs that will let you, that you can actually mix a show with. And they are $50 and $350 each, depending on which one you have. Now this one, this cloud-ready broadcast mixer is $2,800 a year. Like this is when you get serious and go, I'm going to make a business out of this. This is what you can, get as a, kind of a monthly for, it's...
Can all the inputs be in the cloud too? I mean, is it...
Yeah, so basically you can use NDI. So you can basically have a show and have, because a lot of us are building shows where we have, for instance, we have a bunch of Zoom in the cloud, and we're pushing those via NDI out into a switcher like vMix in the cloud. But the hardest part was, what do you do with the audio? Like, how do you make the audio work? And so you can now pass this into it, and big companies like Google and Yahoo and, a bunch of other people are testing it, like Sky and other folks are like, this is the thing right now that is working, for what they're doing. And so they built it. Basically what they did is they took a whole bunch of input over the last year and started building in all the mix minuses. So instead of having to like design a mix minus that you would normally do in the DAW, you just hit a button. This is another contributor. And so they've had a lot of really good input. And so anyway, so it's, if you're trying to do something, I mean, it'll work locally as well as a software mixer. But it is what a lot of people are using it for is putting it like literally on an AWS instance, and then now all their audio can be managed and powerfully. And again, it was something that I was even doing what I do, I had heard it go by a little bit, but until a couple of weeks ago, I didn't even know it existed. It was someone in office hours was saying, "Oh, we really need to bring these guys on. They're doing something pretty cool." And so when I met with them last week and talked about it and started, and then some of the folks in our group already use it. And they were like, "Oh, this is great. This is what we use." And so anyway, we're pretty excited. We're going to start using this a lot in our own cloud productions.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah,
really neat. It is Harrison, which is at harrisonconsoles.com. That's right there on the front page. MixBus VBM. Kids, it's about time we wrap this thing up. All those rat holes made the show an hour longer than usual. So I thought we weren't going to have anything to say.
we never have that problem.
The challenge. This is why the teacher keeps separating us, because they put us on the same row together. They disrupt the whole class.
Yeah, exactly.
You can find Alex Lindsay at officehours.global. That is the full-time. It's not just Alex. It's much more full-time Zoom conference that is on Twitter, YouTube. You stream the whole thing on YouTube now, right?
We put it all on YouTube. We don't stream all of it. We stream 2 hours a day of it, but people are talking 24 hours a day. There's 2 hours that we make it look like a show. One thing that we started doing,
it's just on in the background.
Yeah, we're all just talking. Like these random conversations, and depending on who's there, it just becomes kind of a geeky conversation.
Boy, I would love this keynote deep dive with Alex Lindsay. That looks really good.
Yeah, we did that. So we're starting our education hour, 2 hours on Saturday we've added another hour to it, so it's 3 hours long. And it is, but it's technical talks. So technical talks that hopefully impact educators or people in education of all kinds.
Nice.
And so we wanted to do, last week I did kind of it was really like we started doing just all the things the way I build 3 or 4 slide decks a week in Keynote. And so I was just talking about some of the tools that I use that I don't see anybody else use.
Yeah.
So just me talking about the things that I use that no one else uses. And then next week we have some great folks coming on to talk about, they're going to talk about how they're using live, the live video inside of Keynote to build a video. So literally you can just use Keynote as a video production. They're using it as a live video production tool. Like they're cutting to things and showing things and playing videos and everything else with a live input from a switcher going into Keynote in real time. And so they're going to talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to show a couple examples of that as well. So we're going to talk about the newer live video support in Keynote. And we'll be talking about that on this Saturday.
Nice. On Sábado Gigante.
that that was a little while ago, but yeah, that was we did 4 hours. We had concerts and cooking and all kinds of stuff. That's Super Saturday, yeah.
OfficeHours.global, and of course, if you want to hire Alex, as many do, some of the biggest companies and governments in the world, 090media.com.
090.media. Yeah, exactly. And we do, virtual events and complex pipelines.
Mr. Andy Iannacco, WGBH Boston, next performance?
On 12:30 on Friday, go to WGBHnews.org, live or later to stream it, live or later. And I'm also going to be doing an AMA on the Twit Discord right after I finish doing NPR. So questions, if you remember any questions you have about me, or any questions ideally questions that are not about me, but you'd like my opinion on, will be probably, because I'm not really that interesting. I will not.
Please.
And let me just start off with, I'm not telling you what is behind the screen.
Oh, so that's what we really want to know.
There's a legal issue there.
There's a person behind the screen.
That is for, by the way, Club Twit members, and we'd love to have you join Club Twit, now 4,000 strong and growing, and it's really helpful for us to smooth out the economic ups and downs, especially during COVID. It's been kind of crazy, but also it's a great way to get extra content from Twit. $7 a month. You get ad-free versions of all the shows. You also get access to the Twit Discord, which is always a great place to hang. And that's where we do some of these events like Andy's Ask Me Anything this week. Stacy has her book club, Stacy Higginbotham's book club there. The Giz Fizz, the Untitled Linux Show. There's all sorts of stuff going on in the Club Twit Discord. Plus, you get the Twit Plus feed, which is where Andy's Ask Me Anything will end up after it's all done. And there's all sorts of stuff in the Twit Plus feed, including stuff before and after the show that, believe it or not, is often more interesting than the shows themselves. Friday, 10 a.m., Andy Iannacco. That's going to be something to listen to. You can listen live or after the fact on the Twit Plus feed. If you're not a Club Twit member, why the heck not? We want to invite you to join. Just go to twit.tv/clubtwit. There's also corporate memberships. We have several corporate members now as well, and we welcome that. It's great to have you. Thank you so much, Club Twit members. Renee Ritchie is on YouTube, youtube.com/Renee Ritchie.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm just giving you a chance to plug something.
Oh,
you're so nice to everybody else. You should plug yourself sometimes.
I did a 2-minute highlight reel of the original Steve Jobs iPhone introduction, but with footage from the last 15 years of introductions, just so that I love those words. They're so iconic, but you can see the entire sort of history of the iPhone play out in those 2 minutes of him announcing it.
Oh, what a great idea. I'm going to definitely watch that. That sounds really, really cool. Join the 303,000 subscribers now who are devotees of Renee's, youtube.com/Renee Ritchie. There's also the untold history of the iPhone.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So many stories.
So many stories.
I'm working on a continuation of that. I want to do a part 2 where it talks about Eric Schmidt's interesting gambit between the Android team and the iPhone team as to who knew what and when about everything that was going on.
Ooh, fun. That's fun. Very nice. You're doing such a good job. Renee Ritchie is on YouTube. Smash the subscribe button, hit the bell, ding the dong, do it all, because he's awesome. Now there's this thing that says join next to the subscribe button. What's that mean?
Oh yeah, I'm testing that out because Patreon is like it's different. Like it's very different, and YouTube has this new membership thing where they let you have like a members only area and let you offer members only videos and stuff. So I'm trying it out. Might move from Patreon to YouTube. I'm not sure yet. Everything in one basket versus the convenience of integration.
Yeah. So you could do both. I guess you can't really reasonably.
You can. Like it's just maintaining all these digital gardens at some point.
Yeah. Well, I support it. That's great. Join. I'm going to join. Yeah. We do MacBreak Weekly of a Tuesday. We start a little late today because, well, we were talking about comic books. You know how it is. Normally, you should tune in at 11 a.m. Pacific for the comic book conversation. 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1900 UTC of a Tuesday morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. You can watch it at live.twit.tv. If you're watching live, chat live at irc.twit.tv or in the Club Twit Discord. After the fact, on-demand versions of the show available at twit.tv/mbw. There's a YouTube channel dedicated to MacBreak Weekly. And, of course, the best way to subscribe would be to get out that podcast player of yours and add us so you get it automatically the minute it's available. And if your podcast program allows reviews, would you do me the service, a favor of just giving us a 5-star review? That's all I ask. Just helps spread the word about MacBreak Weekly. Thanks, everybody. Get back to work, though, now because... say it with me. Break time is over. Bye-bye.
Do you have an iPhone, an Apple Watch, an iPad, or any number of Apple devices? Well, you have got to check out iOS Today with me, Micah Sargent, and Rosemary Orchard. We cover all things iOS and help you get the most out of your devices.